The young man with black hair, while on the verge of death, sat on the railings of the balcony and realized that his end was close. Nearby were a glass and a small bottle with liquid. A crowd of angry people moved behind the balcony. In their hands, they held pitchforks, axes, and a variety of dangerous weapons. Everyone was focused on the persecution of a person, constantly chasing after him. The city burned and crumbled in ruins. The young man thought everything had disappeared through the seal of darkness, and he himself became cursed. He looked at the back of his right hand. On the back of his hand, a seal of darkness was visible. The magic of darkness is strictly forbidden. It is worth consulting a person as she inevitably absorbs her, turning into a demon. That is why the use of this force was under the harshest ban. The young man believed that with such a sign he would not be able to master any other element, neither air, light, nor earth, lightning, water, or fire. He took a small bottle with poison. Opening the bottle, it poured its contents into a glass of water. Thinking about fatigue and complete lack of meaning in life. Under the influence of poison, the water, along with a glass, changed color and began to release an eating smell. The young man understood. If he went down, people can meet him hostile. He desperately realized that only one choice remains. Drinking a sip of water, he clenched a dark ball in her right hand. She pulled her mysterious dark energy. For a moment he allowed himself to think that at least he wanted to feel what the magic of darkness is. When he lifted the ball, the city enveloped in thick clouds, and a dark energy thread stretched out of the ball above the city. People who witnessed this scene were deeply frightened. It seemed to them that the end of the world had come. The ball of energy grew rapidly, and then exploded with a bright flash of light. Seeing the power of darkness, the young man felt a real admiration. Using it, he noticed how it envelops unusual peace. Finally, slightly smiling, he leaned against the railing and almost lay on him, completely relaxed. He was not interested in nothing but the all-consuming desire to fall asleep. The empty bottle and the vial rolled the floor, pouring the residues of the liquid. In his thoughts, the young man did not feel any pity, even if he was destined to turn on a demon. Suddenly a female voice full of anger came in his mind. She angrily asked what was wrong with this body. The young man suggested that he may be a demon, and was completely jumped by surprise. A female voice was heard in his head, which once again demanded to get up from him and not to lie out of business. The young man was surprised, because he did not turn into a demon, as he expected before. He understood, albeit partially, which is different from others. And now he was interested in curiosity. What demon lives in his mind? The young man suddenly began to cough, covering his mouth with his palm. When he took his hand, she was already covered with blood. Drinking the poison in advance, he did so that the demon could not harm people. He began to cloud consciousness. He was covered with a strong cough. The head was dizzy, and he regretted that he was too early to say goodbye to his life. At that moment, the door to the balcony suddenly opened, and a girl appeared on it. But the young man was already slowly losing his connection with reality, and only a regret that he did not know before overshadowed his thoughts. The crying girl called him, but he no longer called. Someone called a young man by his name, and in a moment he opened his eyes, seeing himself in the middle of his baby. He was full of his full name, Alec Arnius Lux. Little Alexei stood stunned, thinking if he died and where he got. He was approached by the holy and nuns, wondered if he was ready, and wanted good luck. One of them assured the boy that he would certainly receive holy seals. Seeing a statue of the saint with the wings similar to the angels, he gradually began to realize the meaning of the words he spoke. He was surprised what was happening. It was the ceremony of obtaining a divine sign. Looking at, Alex saw many young children around him. He thought whether it was some of the illusion created by a demon, because he could not understand how he was back in time. It seemed impossible for him. Not understanding what was happening, a little boy with blonde hair stood next to him. Looking around, the child in a voice thought that his brother may have received an amazing seal, unlike him. Hearing a familiar voice, Alex turned sharply and saw a small Ruber. Ruber, in turn, was surprised to view Alex. Looking at him, Alex wondered with a slight sadness that then the Ruber was beaten. On the back of the palm of a little girl with long blonde hair, white seals are visible. She was the daughter of Margrave Illyria, Iris Illyria. She was nicknamed the Holy Seal. Alec looked at her, recognizing and remembering her. At the same time, the whispers crawled in the hall. They say, It is Mr. Alec Bride, and therefore she is still considered a holy one. Noticing that he was looking at her, Iris smiled with extraordinary tenderness. But Alec suddenly turned away, and suddenly someone else got the seal. It was a ruble, which got the seal of the god of light. The sign flashed on the hand of Ruber, and he happily told everyone. It was the seal of the god of light. A surprised whisper swayed in the hall. Such a sign is extremely rare. Alex watched everything that happened, and thought that all this was completely consistent with the past. The saints appeared before Oleg, and one of them announced that his turn was now. But at that moment, an episode from the past fell in the memory of Olex. The same saintly renounced him, calling the birth of darkness. He was mentioned, as in the past, he was called the Cursed Prince, and he mentally noted that if he was again under the seal of darkness, he would have to endure his own previous life again. He thought that if it depended on him, he would choose his own seal. Suddenly, a dark seal appeared on the back of his palm. Everyone who saw this seal covered horror and surprise. Alex stood in the heart of the crowd, raising his right hand on which the seal was visible. A spooky silence reigned in the hall. Even the holy, stunned. They did not find words. Gradually, people began to spread among people. Everyone said that darkness was sealing. His brother Rublert, who stood nearby, thought with surprise, "He has a light," and his brother, it turns out, darkness. After this opinion, the Ruble smiled maliciously and satisfied, covering his smile with his hand. As if nothing had happened, he tried to cheer Alec, but Alec suddenly laughed loudly and frankly, noting that darkness had come again. This reaction caught the Ruble by surprise. He looked at him in surprise, deciding that he probably came out of his mind. Iris did not hide her astonishment, also cast a surprised look at him. Alex was on the verge of disruption, mentally asking himself, because of this, he would have to experience the whole horror of past life again. Before the eyes, a picture came. As close, friends, and even servants turn away from him. In his previous life, absolutely everyone turned away from him. He was convinced that this time the engagement of Iris was doomed to break. Before his rebirth, Alec literally lived among books, looking for answers to alarming questions. Why a person has a seal of darkness, and whether it has other properties. He even liked to simply try to master the magic of other elements, at least to be useful and earn recognition among people. The servant, who watched him during the training, whispered in a whisper, "The damn prince," which was in vain tried to master magic, though he did not possess it. They mocked him, calling him a rude. Remembering all the difficult moments of his past, he understood. To get this seal, not his guilt. The mistake of life was that he considered this seal a curse, not a blessing. After all, before his death, he learned that he could safely use the magic of darkness without risking to turn into a demon. With the awareness of this truth, he decided that everything will be different in the present life. With a smile full of determination, he promised himself that he would become the most powerful magician. In the luxurious palace, warm rays penetrated through the windows of the sun. Numerous servants gathered in one of the halls. Among them, a young man, markedly worrying and trembling with fear of Alec, asked him a short vacation for a month. This spacious, cozy room belonged to Alex. He sat on the bed and listened carefully to the request of the servants. He sat and mentally noted how absurd this scene seems absurd. One could simply admit that you want to leave everything immediately, only because of fear. Subsequently, Alec took up a book that contained guidance on the magic of darkness. At first, he decided to try his own strength in creating a fireball. He decided that the knowledge of the magic of fire would not be needed. So he just tried to squeeze the magical power, forming a ball from it. He managed to form a small ball, but suddenly it broke out of place and exploded. After the fall, Alec decided that he should not use such magic yet. He realized that first it was necessary to understand the principles of dark magic. And it was at this moment that the demon's demon sounded in his mind. The demon became angry, not understanding why she could not master the boy's body. Hearing her voice, Alec aloud reported that he seems to be all right with him. He heard the response surprised the demon. She did not expect the guy to hear her. Demons, angry even more, was surprised how a simple man dared to speak to her, and demanded that she give her a body without delay. However, Alec decisively refused to execute her order. The stunned Demos shouted even louder, demanding that he leave the body. From a deafening cry, he mentally covered her mouth with her hand and told her to silence. Suddenly, he stopped hearing her voice. Recalling that the demons have the magic of darkness, he asked aloud to hurt him. In response, the Demos immediately screamed, demanding to give her a body. But of course, he refused. Sitting on the floor in his room, he decided to turn to the archive in search of information about demons, hoping to find out more about them. Alex sat among a whole mountain of books, trying to focus on creating a spell. The most important thing in this case was to clearly imagine the end result. So, Alec, with his eyes closed, he reproduced in his thoughts what he wants to achieve. Alekiv managed to invent new magic. Now it is only necessary to improve their skills. Behind the door, the voice of the servant who called him. Waking up after class, Alec examined his room. Dark magic traces of dark magic were blowing everywhere in the air, and whole mountains of books about demons cured on the floor. Seeing all this, Alec hastily made all things in his black box. Some of the servants and maids rushed to him, as if they were his personal servants. The senior servant who looked into the room was surprised to see that she was absolutely empty. Alexei explained that he just cleaned a little. Changing the topic of conversation, Alec did not ask the following question without unnecessary ceremonies. He was already going to explain that he did not need any servants, however. The senior servant interrupted him, noting that it is impossible because he is a prince. Alec, thinking about their perseverance, looked coldly at them and asked if they were really certain that they wanted to serve him. The senior servant, using his advantage in height, looked at Alea from top to bottom. In the eyes of the senior servant, Alex seemed an ordinary boy. Suddenly, in his mind, a mocking, disrespectful ghost of the voice of Demosa came from him. She was clutching from him, emphasizing that everyone is perceived only as a child around him. Somewhat annoyed with the words of a Demos, he ordered the servants to leave the room to discuss the terms of the agreement with his brother. The servants silently executed the order and quietly disappeared behind the door. Finally, when everyone left him alone, Alec relaxed, lay down, and sat down. When the excitement subsided a little, he thought it was good that no one learned about dark magic. However, he did not expect his darkness to be so capacious. He thought that he probably had to check his maximum at the pond. The Damonza, who settled in his mind, laughed. No one wants to serve him, so he can give his body to her. Without listening to her words to the end, Alex suddenly jumped forward. Thanks to this jump, he instantly found himself elsewhere, outside the palace. Looking around, Alex noted that this ability is extremely useful. The demons inside him was stunned by this discovery. Demois, without understanding, asked how he managed to do it. He quite calmly replied that it was only a jump, and negligently added that demons are constantly using such magic. She, a little surprised, agreed. He, having perceived her as a low-rank demones, decided that she was weak. The Demosa was embarrassed without deciding to deny it, and asked where they were going. Alex stopped in front of a majestic monastery, near which the nun was drawing something on the road. The Demosa felt restless here. She was not at all liked. The Demosa asked, a little frightened, if he really intended to expel her. Meanwhile, Alec approached the nun and called it. She returned to him and noticed the coat of arms on his cloak. She whispered something about the emblem. Alec interrupted her, saying that she seeks to get to the monastery. The nun, having put her hands in prayer, began to read the prayers quietly and beseech for mercy for this child. Demosa, noticing the seal of darkness in the nun, paid the attention of Alec and wondered if it was threats. However, Alec assured her that it was not necessary to worry, after which he entered the monastery together with the nun. Inside the monastery, the guy noticed a girl with a pigtail who marked the floor. Noticing the stranger, she joyfully turned to him, asking if he was not new. On her hand, a seal of darkness was visible. It is worth noting that inside the monastery, all present were engaged in cleaning the hall. Everyone had a print of darkness. Alec was approached by a girl with a ponytail. He spoke the first, calling his name immediately. The girl smiled warmly. In response, she was also named. Her name was Lena, and she was glad to get acquainted with him. Alec smiled at her, but in her soul sadly noted that such good people were here only through the seal. Suddenly, he heard the voice of Demois, who suggested that he make Lena with his follower. He thought to stop speaking nonsense, because Lena was still too young. Demosa tried to create the right atmosphere. It was then that Lena wondered why he came here. He told her that she was looking for a butterfly and a maid in this place. Lena offered her help, and he was grateful to her. They slowly crossed the hall, and Alec addressed it with a question who could advise. He needed those people who met his requirements. He told her that he really needed a person who could be trusted. I thought in my thoughts, how well it would be if such people really existed. At this point, Lena proposed to introduce him to Alicia. Lena helped him get to Alice. They left the monastery and went to the cemetery. There was a creepy silence in the cemetery. A dead atmosphere was felt. Crosses huddled on the tombstones, oppressing this place even more. In the middle of the cemetery was a nun who dug the ground with a shovel. Lena called her in her name loudly. Alex saw a nun that returned to them. She did not resemble a person at all. Her head was like a pig's head with big eyes and a round heel like a pig. Her legs were reminiscent of wolves, with long, sharp claws. Then Lena introduced Alicia to this girl. Looking at Alicia, Alec thought that she may actually be a demon. After listening to the whole story, Alicia, with excitement and fear, asked why the choice was made on her. All this time, Alec did not leave the suspicion that she could be a half-arc. Aleka swept a light, thoughtful sadness. There were no special prohibitions in the palace, but he suggested that everyone would be amazed if the demon became his maid. Alicia noticed this expression on his face. Alicia quietly noted Lenny that she did not even confess to him in her demonic essence. Turning to Graves to forgive her, Alicia reported Alec that she was already doing graves, and then headed further, to the graves themselves. In the thoughts, Alec came together for the fact that she was a semi-demon, and it struck him well. When he understood, he suggested that she may refuse because he was a demon. Alec wanted to stop her, explaining that she had misunderstood her something. But as soon as they stepped on the territory of the cemetery, dark magic escaped from the ground. At the entrance, Lena stopped him, grabbed her hand and pushed it back. When both noticed a dark ball of energy, she explained that it was a cemetery of cursed, so dark energy often appears here. Alicia paid attention to the ball and pointed to it. Lena continued that this is why Alicia works here. Thanks to the seal of the Holy Knight, she is able to cope with this task without difficulty. With one powerful wave, Alicia destroyed a ball. Alec was well aware of how rare and strong the seal of the Holy and the God of Light was. He looked at Alicia and wondered how she managed to work in the cemetery, having such a unique seal. Alec touched the ground with his hand with a seal, and made sure that the soil in the cemetery is soaked in dark energy. He thought he had no power to destroy this energy, but could use his black box. He called her to himself, and she immediately appeared on his hand. The dark chest immediately began to absorb all the dark energy that has accumulated in the cemetery. Alicia felt it and hurried to move away. The black box absorbed all the dark energy, and Alex sought to fit it to the end, so that all evil was closed inside. Then the very reason for the appearance of this energy would have to disappear. After the dark box has absorbed all the dark energy, the cemetery was noticeably cleared. Now there was no oppressive atmosphere that was striking at the beginning. Even the sun shone over the cemetery especially brightly, giving this place a sense of holiness. Who saw the whole picture completely? It was a great surprise. They surprised that all the dark energy had disappeared. However, Alec replied, the source of darkness, according to him, still remained here. Suddenly, the dragon emerged from the earth, however. It was not a living creature, but a bone dragon. Everyone engulfed fear, and they rushed on the side. The dragon behaved extremely aggressively. Alex remained in place, looking at the monster and realizing that the source of dark energy is the dragon's corpse. The girls who were nearby suggested that Oleksiev join their race. Even the Demoza, who lived in his mind, was frightened this time. To run away, not to stop. But Alec, not looking away from the dragon and not showing fear, calmly assured her they would cope with him. Alex informed Demois that he intended to create a new spell using dark energy absorbed earlier. Deimos, obviously surprised and embarrassed, did not stop persuading him not to run or get involved in dangerous games with dope. Suddenly, Alex created a huge stream of darkness, which he absorbed the dragon with his head. He directed all his dark energy to the attack on the monster. Thanks to this spell, Alec instantly destroyed the bone dragon. All the girls looked at what happened without understanding how they succeeded. The dark energy source was destroyed with the dragon itself. Alec gladly noted that the force exceeded his hope. In his mind, the Demozo scared and annoyed, noting that it was not surprising because he used a considerable amount of dark energy. Lena and Alicia stood behind Alec, who called them, looked at the girls a little frightened and, as if justified, stated that he did not understand how the dragon died. Alicia, becoming a kind of rescue straw, carelessly suggested that the dragon may have destroyed, making it look like nothing special. Lena easily believed in these words, and Alexa realized Alicia was well aware of everything. Alicia added that the bone dragon has finally disappeared, and from now on this place will no longer appear dead. Alex homonyms, not finding words in response. Alicia, meanwhile, took his hands, and with tears in her eyes, sincerely thanked. She noted that it was because of him that it could safely leave this place. Suddenly impressed with such a reaction, Alex suddenly remembered his past life when he was constantly locked in his own room. Then he did everything that was in his power. Alec hoped that someone would come and release him, just as he once saved Alicia. Alicia thanked Alex, holding his palms firmly. For him, it was the first time. He never thought that he would become someone's savior. Still, not letting his hands released, Alicia asked her to allow her to serve him. Felica looked at her with distrust and asked if she was confident in her words. Alec continued, noting that the service at the palace undoubtedly has its advantages, but he warned he would have to deal with oblique views and disdain. She smiled sincerely and said that she did not need money. Everything she wants to serve him always. The sincerity of her words was somewhat embarrassed by Alec. The demons who lived inside him wondered whether he wanted to make Alicia with her follower. Alec agreed, and addressed Alicia itself, saying that he was counting on her. In response, she gladly nodded, agreeing, after which the Damasa concluded a contract with her. And suddenly, Alicia turned into a beautiful young girl in a wonderful way. Her growth and animal traits disappeared without a trace. It became higher, and the feminine outlines came clear, and they also added a lush chest. Due to the sudden transformation and the difference in the growth, Alec was opposite the chest of Alicia. From embarrassment, he was dizzy in his head. Lena also froze in stunning. Without realizing what happened, Alicia touched his face, silently looking to find out what had ended. Alec took his hands, went aside and thought about the consequences. Alec instantly mentally addressed the Damanza, asking if it was her tricks. In response, she justified and noted that she only wondered whether he wanted to make her with her follower. Alec, a little annoying, said that it was different. He asked who these followers were. The Damosa agreed to answer only one condition: if he gave her his body. But Alex was so annoyed that, having suffered from his pressure, the demon eventually agreed to answer. Demeza explained to him that supporters are a kind of magic, similar to human spells. The difference was that when someone becomes a follower, his race changes to the race of the mentor. It was then that Alec understood all the essence, watching the changes that took place with Alicia. Alec approached Alicia with apologies, recognizing that the concluded agreement was a mistake. Alicia looked at him in surprise. Alec assured her that he would immediately cancel the contract. But Alicia stopped him and assured him that everything was fine, and she really likes her new image. Then I thought, if she looked like a man, no problems in the palace would have arisen. Alec agreed and moved forward, calling Alicia. Alicia stopped silently. Lena, watching them, mentally noted how happy the finale of this story was. Lena waved them after them, sincerely wished. Alexei noticed a seal of darkness and stopped, came closer. He took her hand, showing the seal, and explained that her seal contained a blade of darkness. This sign significantly enhances her night vision and the skill of possession of the sword. Hearing about her seal, Lena was enthusiastically asked if he was able to recognize the seals. Alexei replied that he had a certain idea of it. According to him, the ability to distinguish the seals is characteristic of those who wear the seal of darkness. Lena rejoiced in her seal with delight, laughing fun. She thanked Alec for her useful information, noting that she was still needed. Alec only smiled sincerely. Alec remembered his words that he seeks to become the most powerful magician. However, seeing the joyful faces of Lena and Alicia, he realized that his own seal of darkness helped them both. He looked at his hand. A sign of the abyss was visible on it. He had no idea what this seal was capable of. In his past life, he had to go rid of mockery, and everyone was perceived as a demon. But now he realized, above all, he wants to live a new life as the greatest black magician. Such was his promise. For his friends, he will master the magic of darkness. Alex and Alicia, holding hands firmly through the jump, and found themselves in the palace, just in the room of Alec. Alicia looked around. Alec told her that it was his room. She was genuinely surprised by such unusual magic of movement, and did not restrain the words of admiration to Mr. Alec. The same, quietly pointing her finger, made it clear that it should be silent. Alicia gladly fulfilled his request because she swore to him in loyalty and promised that it would remain their common secret. Suddenly, a loud tapping was heard at the door of the room. These were buttocks and maids. Having apologized for anxiety, the butterfly suddenly noticed Alicia, who stood in the middle of the room. The noble, surprised, asked Alexei who this girl was. Alexei introduced Alicia and informed that she would now become his personal maid. The maids behind the Bogretsky began to whisper whether Alicia was a simple girl from the people, because, they say, no one would want to voluntarily serve the damn prince. However, Bogretsky suddenly noticed the seal of the Holy Knight on Alicia, and struck, exclaimed. After the words of the buttermaid, they talked more lively about Alicia, discussing her rare seal, and adding that she should now serve as a seal of darkness. Hearing the whispering of the servants, Alec realized, in this country, people are assessed solely for the seal. He remembered well how in his past life he had to endure a difficult attitude because of the seal, and even could not leave the room then. But despite all these negative feedback, Alicia suddenly stood in defense of Alec, declaring to everyone that he was an extraordinary person, and that he was who rescued her life. She wanted to continue, but Alec stopped her in time, asking not to resort to the details. Lisa understood him, gathered with thoughts, and also stood up for him, assuring everyone that he was just incredible. She even pointed to him, adding that he was a real sympathy. At that moment, Alec thought noted that he was already an adult. Listening to Alicia, the maid noted that she was very merciful, because she regretted their little prince. Their words were even more embarrassed by the girl, and she sought to refute this impression. Then, Alec asked her to calm down a little, but in the soul, Alec felt true happiness, because next to him was a man who was so sincerely concerned with his fate. When Alec was conscious, he asked a butterfly for what reason they arrived. He replied that he was called by the king himself. Alec, along with their brother, was lanching before Majesty. The aristocrats froze behind them, also in a deep bow. His Majesty Fatis, Emperor Lex, strictly shook Alex, calling him sharp words. The emperor sat on his majestic throne, which was a long staircase. He stated that he had heard from the destruction of the constant captaining of Alec to his address. However, the word mox was somewhat embarrassed by Alec. Suddenly at that moment the Ruble said, saying that his brother was already a damn seal. He asked me not to be too harsh. After hearing the words of Ribera, the emperor felt his own generosity, and then strictly remarked Alec that there would be because he should be ashamed, and he spoke that he may have been damaged by him not by chance, but for some purpose. At this time, the Ruble looked at his brother, frankly mocking him. Alec believed that they were close enough before they received the seal, and did not remember that he once mocked him. The emperor, pointing his finger on Alec, ordered him to deprive him of the throne of the empire, as well as break the engagement from Iris. All present were stunned. Among them was Iris, which it was also extremely surprised. Robert also did not hide surprise, but for him this news brought only joy. All present in the hall began to whisper, sympathizing with Alec because of a cruel punishment imposed by the emperor. It was then, in the eyes of all, she stood on the side of Iris, opposing the will of the emperor. He looked at her and immediately recognized. Iris, despite the crowd and the presence of the emperor himself, strongly stood in defense of Alec, saying that he would never dare to do so. He remembered that she had a holy seal. In the hall, everyone was talking about discussing what happened before their eyes. Alec inadvertently wondered why Eris protects him. After all, in the past life, everything was completely different. Recalling his past life, Alex almost did not communicate with Iris, especially after he received the seal. When Alec was 6, he fell in love with her at first sight and immediately offered to get married. Since then, they have decided to be engaged, but then she began to avoid it again. After the day when he was handed seals to 7-year-old children, he no longer saw it. Alec thought that if she did not really love him, she could just break the engagement, but for some reason she did not. He liked the idea that she may have pity him because she was holy. However, it did not have any significance for him. The emperor, for a long time, noted that the holidays are still too young and does not understand many things. Iris wanted to be argued, but her father stopped her with a gesture. After that, the emperor turned to Alec and ordered him to explain. Alec listened carefully to this order. Subsequently, loud explosions of laughter were heard in Rubert's bathroom. The owner himself could not restrain his joy. Sitting in the bath, he rejoiced that his father now unconditionally supports him. Rebert sat on a stool while 4 maids were carefully buying it. Suddenly he noticed one of them. It was the former maid of his brother Alex. Robert began to ask her on whose side. The girl servant hesitated, but still assured that she remains true to him. Robert mocked his brother. I am sure that his father now supports him. She sought to deprive Alec. Rulbert also wandered his brother, Iris. He was convinced that she would certainly become him. The Bogretsky Ruber came into the bathroom just when Rulbert shared his plans to conquer Eris's heart. Once at the door, and inadvertently hearing these words, he froze, not knowing how to behave. The Bogretsky, without spending time, told the destructive that Mrs. Eris had left their estate. The news heard stunned and annoyed the destruction, so that he pushed away all the maids. Rupert wondered why Iris left their house, and suddenly it was illuminated. She may have followed Alec. It annoyed him terribly. Everything was reduced to Alec again. Dvoretsky then informed him about the arrival of the priest bureau, and stated that Rybert was also expecting. The bureau was an elderly servant of the Church of Light. Robert smiled happy and informed the chamber that he would come to him now. Burios, along with several faithful vassals, thanked the destruction for the hospitable reception in his palace. He was not only a representative of a well-known family, but also headed the priests of the cult of worship of the Light of Light. Burios, hiding his true intentions, felt compassion and annoyance because his older brother Alec received a damn mark. The cult of the Light sincerely hated all the carriers of the darkness of darkness. Rublet replied to the priest that their cursed prince would soon leave the walls of this castle. The priest, apparently excited, noted that such people can immerse the whole empire into the chaos. The destruction, without hiding his intentions, answered him that if he told everything about his father, then he would deal with the damn prince. The priest, barely noticeably smiling with his spooky smile, undoubtedly supported the right decision of Rupert. So there was only a little scared to Alec. Rupert believed that earlier the father paid attention only to Alec, but now everything would be different. He laughed quietly, imagining that no one dares to ignore the Light of the Light himself. Now his goal was to capture the entire empire. Meanwhile, Alex Alicia asked in the room of Alex Alicia what she should do next. Alec, not changing a little on the face, calmly replied that they would do nothing. Alex informed Alicia that he had owned a small territory on the border of the empire, so they could safely leave the castle. This area was called Tiaris, and Alicia has never heard of such a place before. Alec began to explain, pointing to the map that this land was not taxed. Most likely, no one lived there at all. Alicia managed to disassemble the name of this country, which caused surprise to Alec. Then the girl explained that she studied a little in the monastery. The Tiaris province was one of the 11 provinces of the ancient Lisk Empire. When the empire was called sacred, these lands remained abandoned. Alicia noted that there are many monsters living there. She wondered how he would be able to cope with such a edge. Buck replied that this is not necessary. If he becomes a lord, he will have to pay the empire taxes. In addition, there was no one who could rule there on these lands, so there was no need to go there. However, Alec did not think that this land was actually designed for those who wear the seal of darkness. However, Alec still decided to visit these lands. Alicia also wanted to accompany him, and Alec did not object. Together, they decided to get on the road. Animals took place at the stadium on a sunny day. The stands were filled with viewers. The presenter announced the microphone at the beginning of the race. The presenter commented on each of them through a microphone. He talked about an animal by the lightning shadow. She was confidently breaking forward, and today she participated in her first race. Already she showed incredible results. Finally, Lightning Shadow escaped, and the first crossed the finish line, leaving the opponents behind. Alec and Alicia, sitting in the stands, joyfully celebrated her victory, which became their common habit. Even the demon joined their triumph. Alec and Alicia stood by the cashier, taking money. Those who watched this considered them lucky. But in fact, Alec already knew the results in advance, because in the previous life, the rates were the only entertainment for him. The cashier raised all the money, and they turned out to be so much that they filled the whole tub. He asked if he could pick up this money with money. Meanwhile, Alec thought about whether he was using his magic, but unexpectedly, Alicia lifted this tub and said she could carry it herself. The cashier was genuinely surprised, and Alec thought, even if Alicia changed her race, the strength of the orc seemed to be left with it. Alicia kept overboard, and asked Alec to always give her any cargo, because she was his maid. But Alec thought that this was not in her duties. Alex called her Dark Box, and she instantly absorbed the money sparrow. After that, he explained to Alicia that this money would be needed to get to Tiaris, because the road to this city takes a whole month. Alec and Alicia leisurely walked the streets of the city to the palace. Alicia advised Alec to hide all her baggage in a dark chest. Alec agreed to this idea, adding that they would need more horses. He also expressed the desire to entrust Alicia to buy sleeping bags and clothing. Alicia agreed with enthusiasm. A half-voice mutilated that she would choose his underwear, and even that only they would go into this journey. Hearing her words, Alec asked what was talking about. In response, Alicia was charming with a smile. Two men came to the tavern. Going inside, they saw numerous visitors to communicate, drink, and have fun. Looking around, they both were convinced that it was indeed a tavern, and for Alec this institution was new. It was for the first time. One of the waiters approached them, smiled politely, and greeted adventurers in the guild, and then held a registration rack. Alicia asked Alec whether he wanted to register, but he refused. Alec wanted to add that he was forbidden, but Alicia, if descended, could register on his own. Alicia replied to this that she would do as he wants. At this point, a crowd of men who sat at their tables looked at her with interest. Alicia noticed this, and a silent whisper warned Alec, who was watching them, distrustfully looking around. However, Alec was well aware. Their view is not directed at him, but on Alicia. Outward, Alicia was distinguished by its great attractiveness. On her figure, emphasizing expressive bends and luxurious breasts, a form of the maid was drawn. Not surprisingly, all men immediately began to argue who the first to dare to approach her. It seems that he fully understood the situation and the mood in the hall. Leaning, he whispered quietly in his ear. Whether she is not concerned about her only around her. Because she is extremely beautiful. Alicia immediately denied that it could not be. The girl's long hair was reminiscent of Alicia of her mother, and she really liked it. At the same time, Alec inadvertently mentioned that demons have been living in these parts for a long time. I like to be interested in Alicia, or her mother was a person. Alicia confirmed it and remembered how at the age of 5 the mother left her in the monastery. She remembers almost nothing about her. She does not even remember her mother's name. After a bitter memory, she smiled and said she remembered for sure. She had a good family. Alec looked at her with relief. Alex suggested Alicia to register, as it could be extremely useful in their journey. He explained that you could get the status of an adventure seeker from the age of 12, and asked how much she turned. Alicia replied that she was 15 years old. Alec thought that with such appearance, she was not at all like a 15-year-old girl. Aleng further explained to her that they would be able to fulfill different assignments during the trip, and make money on it. Alicia replied that everything was clear. Alec, tanned and confident, answered her that there was no such thing as a lot of money. However, he said, life becomes calmer when the wallet is full. Alicia, sitting nearby and catching the look of his tanned eyes, felt a slight touch. All this time, a little girl stood next to them. The height is the same as Alec, with a mask on her face. She passed slowly, and only then did Alec notice her, feeling some strange anxiety. A girl in a mask with silver hair passed past Alec and Alicia. Alec did not look away from her, feeling something unusual in her. Seeing how he looks at a stranger, Alicia clicked him anxiously. Alec asked Alicia to apologize. In response, she immediately wondered if he liked the girl. Alec assured that this is not the case. It seemed strange to see the baby in such a place. Alec thought, remembering the image of that girl. Her hair shone with silver, just like Iris. It seemed to him that she could be. But after all, he rejected this opinion. He remembered how Iris defended him in front of the Emperor, and decided that he would certainly thank her at the meeting. It seemed to him that perhaps in this life they were destined to understand. The girl in the mask went forward and looked at them silently. When Alec and Alicia have completed purchases, 5 men in masks and raincoats came out on the street. They were sharply ordered to stop. All strangers pulled the blades and said loudly that they were looking for a damn prince. Alicia made a step forward, protecting Alec. Alec was outraged that 5 men stood against a defenseless girl and child. Alex reached out with the seal, wanting to show them all the power of dark magic. However, Alicia, who stood nearby, asked to leave it, imagining how Alex would later express her admiration. 5 men rushed to the attack, and Alicia knocked one of them's sword from one accurate stroke on his leg. Grabbing his sword with her hand, she immediately rushed to the attack and had almost immediately knocked down all the opponents. All 5 men lay on each other. Alec did not hide the delight, generously praised Alicia, and it was all easy for it. She remembered how to fight the dead at the monastery cemetery, and did not even suspect that these opponents would be so weak. Alicia noted that there was nothing special about it, they say. She tried only for the sake of Alex. At that moment, the guy's mind was the voice of a demon-observing man who followed everything that was happening. Alec mentioned that he had a Demosa. She was mad with anger because he completely forgot about her. Demosa told Alec an interesting thing. The strength of his followers depends directly on the power of their lord. In other words, the stronger Alec himself, the more powerful those who obey him become. Alec understood what Deimos was saying and thought with awkwardness. If he used dark magic, he would have destroyed the whole city. Alice looked at the unconscious men and asked Alec who they were. Alec replied that he was a killer from a cult who worships the light of light. Alicia calmly noted that they should not worry. These opponents are too weak. In response, Alec noted that it should not be relaxed. Alicia also added that it was only ordinary bandits. Alec suggested that he probably had a ruble, and smiling Alicia assured her that he was not afraid of anything next to her. Alec, along with Alicia, went horseback riding on a monthly trip to Tiaris. Alec was a little discouraged to sit in front and feel Alicia's chest, but they still continued to go further. Alec, along with Alicia, rides on the road to Tiaris. From time to time, Alec used his spell on horseback riding, so that the path to Tiaris became shorter for them. Alicia advised him to immediately use the jump just to Tiaris. But Alec denied that he would not be able to make such a jump. He should know exactly where he was going, and in Tiaris he has never been. In addition, for Alec, such a large jump remained unbearable. Listening to him, Alicia hugged the guy, gently grinding from behind. Alec, a little embarrassed and surprised, called Alicia. Hugging him, she assured that she would inevitably protect him. Alex only thanked her for these words. After a long road, they reached a place called Librian. From Librian to Tiaris, the path usually takes 2 days. Alicia was glad to wonder Alex's skill, because they managed to get to Librian only in half a day. Alex, hearing her approving words, felt both embarrassed and proud. In addition, they executed several citizens and received money for it. Then they tied the horse in the stable and headed to the hotel. Alex informed Alicia that they would stay here this night. Alicia, with a great hobby, noted that the hotel will be both a bath and a bed. She added that she heard, the maids should help their masters while bathing and dressing. The girl asked for permission to help him, but Alec, with his polite determination, gave up her services. Alexia's refusal was so struck by Alicia that she did not restrain her tears and accused Mr. Alec in despair. Alec, noticing her reaction, felt embarrassment and suggested that Alicia prepare him dinner. Hearing this proposal, Alicia with a passionate thing. Alicia prepared several dishes that looked extremely appetizing. Alex tasted one of them and remained delighted. He praised Alicia, noting that the food turned out to be delicious. Alicia thanked him in response. The head of Alex came in the voice of a Demonza, which noted that Alicia's chest was just the perfect pillow. Feeling the inner shame, the guy mentally ordered her to silence. In the arms of Alicia, there were several baking and fruits, so she demonstrated Alec made during their departure from the capital. Allah remembered how they put the ice in a dark box and got it from there. 10 hours have passed and the ice has not melted yet. Alex suggested that inside the dark chest could be cold, but then other things should freeze. The demonic part inside him, listening to these considerations, was surprised every time. Demos in hysterics asked herself as possible and why they did not melt. After all, she always melted. Suddenly, she turned to Alec with a clumsy question, which means, even time stops in his mailbox. Alec thought that this was true. So, having learned this news, Alicia was genuinely happy. Now, whatever she prepared, everything inside the dark box will always remain fresh. As always, Alicia did not restrain the admiration and praised Alec for his ingenuity. Alec, looking into this dark box, felt that the magic of darkness remains incomprehensible to him. He decided that it was worth examining the impact of this dark box. The night dropped to the city. Alicia slept next to Alecom on the next bed. Meanwhile, Alec, turning on his bed, sat on it. For some reason, Alec did not take a nap, so he decided to take advantage of time and train his spell. He dressed and, honing his skill, began to teleport from the roof to the roof along the street. Suddenly, he stopped near one of the houses and looked at the night city. A fascinating landscape opened from the roof that unfolded in front of him in a shimmering light. Alex admired this spectacle without hiding his admiration. He could not think that he would ever see the capital from the height of a bird's flight. Alec thought, reflecting the restriction of the jump. He decided that you needed several experiments just on the road. Suddenly, a shout came from below. Someone asked who was there. Alec looked around and noticed 2 guards on the balcony floor below. Hearing the noise, they immediately began to look carefully, trying to find out its cause. Using invisibility invisibly, he went down quietly to them. The guards never noticed his presence, convincing everyone that there was no living soul here. The guards walked past Alec. None paid attention to him. Suddenly, one of them shouted, looking for Mrs. Iris. Alec heard her name with surprise. Alec mentioned the girl he saw in the tractor. He was inadvertently thought, wasn't Iris? But he could not understand why she behaved that way. The guards were pouring everywhere, looking for Iris and calling it loudly. At this time, Alec took advantage of the jump and found himself in his room where Alicia slept. Once in the room, he removed the magic of invisibility. A thoughtful expression appeared on his face. He thought whether it was worth looking for Iris. After all, he was her bride. But suddenly Alex decided that it was not necessary to do it, because perhaps Iris was running out of her home for some reason. Alec reassured himself with the idea that she was watching experienced guards, so he has nothing to worry about, Alex thought. He was deprived of the right to the throne, the engagement from Iris was torn, and the present life was becoming more like what it was before. He could not determine whether it was good or bad, but after all, it didn't matter. Alec was not going to give up. At that moment, half ash, Alicia also raised her hand and, marinating in her sleep, said she wanted to follow Alec. Alex smiled with her act and looked at her thoughtfully, thinking what a stormy dream now worries her. Alicia, however, slept calmly, revealing and not even feeling cool. The next day, Alec and Alicia went to Tiaris riding. Alec reassured the satellites, assuring that they would soon be in Librian. On the way, they managed to overcome the way even faster than Pegasus once did. Suddenly, some creature began to get out of the earth, lifting the dust clubs around. Alec looked around and watched in confusion, not understanding what was appearing in front of him. Suddenly, a large snake crawled out of the earth, and with it rose black crows. They all rushed rapidly. Alec shouted with surprise that the serpent of death before them. In addition, Alicia warned that the demonic crows fly after them. The Demosa, who lived inside Alec, suddenly worried. Without stopping, she convinced him that the snake was striking as a dragon, and it was impossible to defeat them. I told him that I needed to run even faster. Alec felt excessive noise in his head because of the demon's thoughts, but understood that even experienced adventure seekers could not cope with them. Alec noticed the city nearby, and also noticed a group of people who fled from the crows, catting with some things. Alicia, looking at them, confessed that even with the help of Alex, magic would not cope with the sword. She asked him what they planned to do next. At this point, the black crow grabbed one of the people and lifted it up. She carried it directly to the snake's mouth and released. The man fell rapidly in the open mouth. Then Alec told Alicia that they would be able to save everyone if he got his hand with the seal. Alicia was completely ready. Alec used his seal to impose a blade of darkness. It was a magical skill, as if it had cut all its darkness, full of dark light. Alicia waved a blade towards the crows that flew past, and many of them immediately fell dead to the ground. Alec and Alicia remained side by side. With their efforts, a group of people was able to get to the city whole and intact. Alicia asked Alec what they would do with these animals. She advised to use their meat for cooking. Alec in response noted that the scales and the tits of snake, like the pen of the crow, are well sold in the guild. He gripped that they could pay 5 gold for 1 scales. If they manage to sell everything, then they will be able to live in the capital for half a year. Along with him, Alicia monitored his reaction to his possible earnings, feeling some touch. Alicia removed the snake scales for Alec and disassembled the crow to cook them for dinner. In the evening, they spread the bonfire and put the crows there to fry them on fire. When everything was ready, they sat around the campfire and enjoyed delicious food. Suddenly, the bushes were rustling. Alicia immediately alerted and grabbed the sword, ready to attack the unknown. However, Alex managed to stop it. A small snail crawled out of the bushes. Alec and Alicia watched him, and Alec noted that these creatures were quite safe. Alicia suggested that he apparently fell behind the group due to monsters' attacks earlier. Alec offered him a snail soup. He nodded approved and ate some soup. After the snail reinforced, he settled next to Alec, as if he wanted to sniff his presence. Alicia suggested that he may have loved them and suggested that he take it with him. Alec did not deny. Alika took the snail to his hands and wondered if he wanted to become his follower. The Demosa, who settled in Alex's head, was doubtful. He was sure, because the snail was too weak. She advised to look for someone stronger, but Alex stopped her annoyingly, and then the demons subsided without any objections. Alicia suggested that the snail name it, mentioning that she had previously called the horse with a hell cord. Suddenly, the snail's body lit up and began to change. He continued to think what a snail would look like. In his imagination there were images of a young girl and a boy. But after the transformation, the snail remained unchanged, even round and irreversible. Alice looked at him carefully and noted that nothing had happened. Alec was just wondering why it happened. Then the Demosa replied to him that perhaps only demons were able to turn into a person, but she was not sure of it. Alec mentally called her a worthless demons. Alicia all the time invented the names for the mucous membrane and suggested that one of them give a mini-electric. Alec replied that he still needed to think about it. Alex suggested calling snail Elic. Alicia immediately noted that this name combines their own, Alec and Alicia, and gladly responded, calling Alec genius. Suddenly Alec was worried and began to fuss. Alec and Alicia asked him what happened. Within seconds, a man from the same group of people ran up to them. Seeing that everything was fine with them, he calmed down. He apologized to the fact that they were in danger through him, and sincerely thanked them for the salvation. Alea returned to the memory that at that moment a group of people carried something heavy. The man asked them whether they were heading to Librian, and then advised to leave this place as soon as possible. He warned, "Soon, the city will fall." The man raised his head, and Alex suddenly saw a big eye. It was not a person. The demon hastily closed his face. Alec and Alicia, sitting on a horse, watched as he returned to the city. Alicia noted that trouble could begin soon, and Alec agreed with her fears. The city of Librian is governed by Lord. Demons settled on his coast. The main protection of the city was high walls. Alec knew that the port was protecting a strong chain, and therefore the attack from the sea was impossible. However, he thought, having on the side of such a defender as the demon, the city would undoubtedly fall. He shared with Halish with his confidence. It was difficult for him to imagine that the city was threatening something in the near future. Alicia agreed with his words. However, Alec did not leave reflections. Excerpts from the past life were torn in memory, which mentioned the death of the city of Librian. Alec clearly remembered the same moment when the knight reported to him, to the Emperor, and the boundary of the destruction of the city. Alec recalled everything and decided to meet with the master of the city. After all, if the events unfold and further, many people can die. Alec and Alicia passed through the majestic gate to the city of Librian. The city walls stood far up, securely protecting the city. Each entrance had a massive lattice that rises during the opening, and at the gate itself were vigilant guards. In the city, residents were engaged in everyday affairs, whispering by discussing a close invasion of demons. Some of the guards have already ordered the demonic servants to carry the weapons and stock the provision, preparing for the defense. Alec with Alicia went deeper and stopped near the palace, where they also had the opportunity to meet with the city lord. Alec paid for an unexpected visit to this respectful man, but the owner only smiled kindly, noting that he was very honored to accept such a guest. Lord politely asked Alec for his visit. In response, he reported that His Majesty had given him the land of Tiaris. Lord asked if he really was going to these devastated lands. Alec calmly confirmed, adding that he intended to explore these lands. After listening to him, the Lord was sadly upset and apologized, because Alea could not support. All people were preparing for the city's defense. However, Alec replied that he did not need any guards. Alex, with seriousness and unwavering, stated to the Lord that he wanted to assist in preparing the city for storming. The Lord for a moment fled from surprise, thinking about Herd. In a moment the owner restrained himself, almost laughing at Alec's face. After all, the boy was still too small to make such conversations. Behind Alec stood Alish, dissatisfied with Lord. She noted that his behavior was impolite. Lord immediately began to justify and apologize, explaining that he smiled unconsciously because of the young age of Alec. Then Alec told that the residents of the city, who carried chains, happened on the way. The Lord replied to him that they may have seen demonic slaves. He ordered these people to bring chains to restore the coastline. Alec remembered the face of the resident who addressed them. Then he realized that there was a semi-blooded Cyclops in front of them. The owner reassured them, they say, it is not necessary to worry, because they are just slaves, free labor. He, for his part, would never involve people in such affairs. The owner continued that they were only demonic creatures. Alec looked at Alilio. Her face proved depression after Herd. Aling appealed to Lord to inspect the chains. He, without denying, gave consent. Alec, along with Alicia, riding the top, looking at the chains. Suddenly, the girl stopped him and, looking carefully, asked if he really wanted to help such a person. Alec looked at Alicia, whose face seemed cold and removed. Alec explained to her that she did not want to help him. He added that there are many people in the Empire who are not so cruel to demons. But if you change nothing, they will all die. Alec and Alicia went city streets. Peaceful residents were dreaming around them everywhere. They smiled at each other and helped. After a short pause, Alicia asked if this city was in danger. Alex replied that the bishop would not worry so hard because of empty words. They recalled the prophetic words of the Cyclops, who warned of the inevitable death of the city. Alicia wondered what happened as a result of these words. Alec replied that it is better to make sure. Alicia, looking at the subordinate demons, sadly noted that in this city she is cruelly behaved. Alec, in response, noted that residents are afraid of the invasion of demons. Alicia, with pain in her voice, began to share thoughts on what she was when she became a demon, and suddenly fell silent in half a word. However, Alec did not have to explain anything. He understood without words. In fact, not everyone was able to accept a demon. They reached the gate of the defensive wall, near which 2 guards were on duty. Ali approached them and reported that she had come to inspect the coastal strip. The guards crossed the spears, blocking the path to the wall and not allowing to go. They strongly stated that they would not let the baby there. Meanwhile, the second of their guards insisted that he did not interfere with the adult, because the prince should come soon. Suddenly, both guards noticed on Alexei the royal coat of arms. Understanding their mistake, both knights began to apologize to Alec, trying to justify that they did not expect to see him so young. Alec remained silent, and Alicia stood behind him and strictly looked at the guards. The guards dropped them and began to explain how the port line was equipped. At this time, the entrance from the sea was temporarily opened. The water stretched between the walls of the fortifications, stretched through the water, which further impeded the penetration into the city. The security guard pointed to the chains, explaining that they were now strengthened in the water. Cyclops floated in the water, repairing and strengthening the chains. Alicia, recognizing one of them, noted that they have already met this Cyclops before. Alec also looked closely at the amazing creature and confirmed her words. The familiar Cyclops closely followed everything that happened in the water and from time to time gave advice on strengthening. It seemed to me that he was the leader of this group. The security guard further explained that they were well trained in the Kowalsk case. In addition to superhuman power, they were responsible for these chains. He assured that there were no grounds for concern, because the demons were given to them. Listening to the guard, Alicia murmured semi-loudly, "Whether a demon or a person in no way affects the ability." Alec agreed with her. It seemed to him that they were depressed from birth only because they were born with demons. Watching how the Cyclops do their work, Alec was convinced that their abilities should not really do not doubt. Alexei stated that he wanted to see the whole chain. He was confused for a moment and did not find what to answer. Alex again stressed that he should personally be convinced of the condition of the chain. He did not mind the thought. The lives of hundreds of people depend on this. The guard listened to the order and went to execute it. The guard approached the lever and pulled it down. At the same moment, a deaf gnashing came. Somewhere near the chain slowly rose. The chain rose from the water, in a miserable state, almost completely torn. Seeing these chains, Alex exclaimed that they were torn and in no way stopped the demons. Alec ordered the guard to report to Lord and ask additional employees. The security guard hesitated for a moment. After that, Alec told him to execute the order and assured that the responsibility was taking over. The guard moved the assignments. Alec, meanwhile, took Alicia with his hands and was teleported to the roof of a defensive wall closer to the sea. From the roof, they noticed many ships approaching the city. Aleng pointed to them with his hand. Seeing the ships, Alicia noted that there were about 100 ships in the bay. Alec assumed that they would probably wait until the onset of darkness to arrange an unexpected attack. Then Alicia paid his attention to the Cyclops, which just fled from the coast directly to the city. The Cyclops in a panic rushed to flee, waving that the chains did not restrain their pursuers, and turned to the main of them, Julia, asking what to do. Julius advised to leave the city and escape. It was at this point that Alec and Alicia suddenly appeared on the way, blocking the road. The Cyclops froze from surprise, preparing for the attack. Julius recalled that he had already met Alec and Alicia. When they fled from a huge snake and crows, these two saved their lives. Julius asked them to miss people, because among them were children who had to be saved. Then Alec wondered where they were going to flee, adding that, in his opinion, in the kingdom of demons were unlikely to be happy. Alec ordered them to give up. However, Julius became angry when he heard it, and decided that if they did not escape, everyone would die. Julius ordered his relatives to run forward, promising to hold the pursuers. His friends tried to conquer him, but Alicia asked Alec to show mercy to them, assuring that he was ready to execute any of his order. At that moment, Julius swung with a hammer and hit exactly where Alec stood. He managed to bounce on time, avoiding the impact. Alicia, watching all this, froze for a moment. Julius raised his hand, going to swing a hammer again. Calling his native to flee, he wanted to win at least a little time in despair. At that moment, Alicia grabbed the sword and stated with indignation that, as a demon, she sympathized with them, but would not spare any who will try to harm her master. Alicia rapidly moved to Julia. He evaded her blows as much as the strength mentally recognized. It is extremely fast. His friends stood behind Julia, looking at him. Julius, pleading, urged them to flee from here as soon as possible. When Alicia was going to strike the last blow, Alec used a protective darkness, covering Julius, who was already ready to sacrifice himself. Julius looked at Alec's magic and remembered how he destroyed all the demonic crows with this magic. All Cyclops were surprised at Alec, wondering what the magic of darkness is. Alec, who still held the protective barrier, replied that it has some features. Alec stopped the fight and informed all Cyclops of the misunderstanding, assuring that he was not going to give them worthy. All Cyclops looked at him in surprise without realizing what was happening. Then Alex showed them his seal of darkness and assured that he was the same as they were. The ruler arrived in the defensive harbor and asked the guards whether they managed to find fugitives. In response, the guards reported that the searches had not yet been made. They combed the entire coast, but the prince has not yet been found. Lord was not joke, and without holding back anger, shouted to the guards that if something happened to the prince, he would personally deprive them of their heads. The frightened guards rushed to work even more, with a fear. Then the owner asked how the repair of the chain was moving. The guard with sadness replied that the chains are badly damaged, and it would take many days to restore them. The Lord was even more angry and mastered him as he heard this news. He exclaimed that everything was over for Librian. It was at this moment that Alex suddenly appeared and told him that he was in serious danger. The Lord was pleased to look at Alec. He was glad that the prince is safe. Alec appealed to the Lord for forgiveness, and then reported to all the alarming news. The demons escaped and returned to their kingdom. Hearing these words, the guard stated that if they fled to the kingdom of demons, it would be impossible to return them. The owner was even more upset. However, Lord mastered himself and thanked Alec with his light smile for his help. He noted that Alec has done everything possible, but work in the port is not yet complete, so they will have to strengthen the defense here. At that moment, Alika suggested his help in the preparation of chains. He turned to the people standing behind, and a gesture called them. Alex informed Lord that he signed an agreement with the masters to restore Tiara, and believed that they would be able to help. Lord listened to this news with surprise and, paying attention to Alian's surprise, wondered if they could repair the chains. Suddenly, an unexpected thought was born in his head. A moment, Alex showed his dark seal Cyclops, assuring that he was the same as they were. He warned that they would not allow them to escape, and the escape would still not save. Far away. Alec assured that he could help them. Cyclops looked at him, full of doubts. Then Alec noted that, having become his followers, they can change their appearance. Instead of fleeing, he suggested that they conclude an agreement with him and promised that he would take care of everyone. The Demosa, who lived inside, assured, even if they tried to escape, she could effortlessly catch them. After listening to him, the Cyclops remained in indecision, convincing each other that only an ordinary person is in front of them, and it is difficult for them to believe it. It was then that Alicia said, attracting the views of all those present. Elysia drew the attention of Cyclops to Mr. Alec, pointed to him, and reported that he was the 6th prince of the Empire. The Ilsix began to repeat the thought that it was a demon. She said she became a follower of her ruler and accepted the current likeness. All the Cyclops froze from surprise, without taking a look. Then Julius asked Alec to ask why to help them, because the city was still doomed. In response, Alec assured that now everything became clear. Alex once again demonstrated his seal, and all the Cyclops immediately recognized the seal of darkness. He also noted that if Julius really despised people, he would not have warned them of the danger that was chatting in the forest. Alex confessed that they need help, and he sincerely wanted to help. In Julia, tears turned to his eyes when he noted that in his opinion, if they escaped, they would finally be able to live quietly. Julius, already in tears, said that the price of this decision would be the death of many people. Alec managed his hand on his head and assured that he understood everything. Alex, with admiration and confidence, assured everyone that they would be able to save Librian. You only need to return the chains to the place. All the Cyclops looked at him with the faith that strengthened in their eyes and, like Alec, were determined to save the city. All Cyclops unanimously agreed to conclude an agreement with Alec. The Demosa was also ready and adopted this arrangement. After concluding the agreement, all Cyclops changed their race. Julius turned into a young girl. All other Cyclops also changed their appearance. They considered their own bodies in surprise. Alicia also felt joy when she pressed the joyful snail of Alex sitting on her hand. Looking at Alex, she wondered, suddenly, Ella will also become a person? Alec felt a genuine surprise, learning that Julia Cyclops is a girl. After converting, all Cyclops were without clothing. Having discouraged Julia, Alec turned away and asked Alicia to bring their clothes. Alex suggested Alicia to teleport to the newly opened clothing store. Alicia also expressed his sincere admiration for his abilities. After all the events, the chain was restored, and the protection became perfect. The owner was genuinely admired by this work and praised Alex's efforts. The owner noted that at such a pace all the chains will be repaired immediately. He praised the masters who were repairing Alex's chains. Alex gladly heard these words. Julia, together with his comrades, restored all the chains in the water. Meanwhile, Alex advised the owner to evaluate people by their abilities, not by origin. Listening to him, Lord replied that he had already lost any hope of protecting the city. However, it was thanks to Alex's masters that he had faith that it was possible. Suddenly, Lord asked Alec to ask if he really wanted to develop Tiaris as his own land. Alec did not immediately understand what the essence of this question was, so he was in no hurry. He liked the idea of creating a home for everyone who is truly expensive, that is, his own estate. He dreamed of creating a space in which everyone would find their place where everyone could live alone and harmony. He imagined how happy all his close friends were now, as if they surrounded him, and he felt at home. Alec mentioned that in his past life the Empire fell in 13 years, but this time he sought to change the course of events. Even if the Empire dies, he still sought to protect his friends at any cost. There was no doubt in his determination. He sought to change Tiaris and create a true paradise there. In his imagination, Tiaris saw this city surprisingly beautiful, a place where all residents lived in harmony and happiness. There was no one here by the race or the seal, and his dear friends were happy, just as he always dreamed of seeing them. He gathered all his friends and confidently led them to Tiara, seeking to see their lands. On the lands of Tiaris on Alex, Alicia and Julia were attacked by monsters. Julia was struggling, but her strength was faded rapidly. Julia was already crying, confessing Alec, who no longer has the strength to fight. Alec was familiar with the experience of battles with monsters. He believed that Tiara had nothing extraordinary. Suddenly, even more monsters attacked on all sides. Alec was confused and could not understand what was happening. Once all the Cyclops were lined up in front of Alec, patiently waiting. Demois rejoiced that Alec has now appeared new supporters, and not only in Cyclops. Julia gladly told her family they already earned many generations for a life of blacksmithing and working in mines, so they were confident in their skill. Alex replied that he was counting on their support. Alec looked at the satisfied Cyclops and thought, there are about 30 people in Julia's clan. Although he had a lot of money, but with so many people would only have them for a few years. He believed that to earn more, it was necessary to go to the capital again. Alex explained to everyone that they needed a stable source of income. First of all, Alec realized that they needed a clear plan to make money. He understood that if he did not change anything, they were not destined here for a long time. In the city of Librian Lord, he addressed Alec with a proposal of cooperation. The Lord assured that since your luminosity has asked this request, Librian would surely assist. After the conversation, they went to a large workshop and stopped in front of a spacious, beautiful building. Looking carefully at it, the Lord pointed to this building, emphasizing that it was here that shops and a large workshop were once located, and all this was just on the main street. Once inside, they inspected the building. It turned out that it was not empty at all. The room was filled with things and furniture. Everyone was surprised and joy in bed, in the bath. It seemed to many that it could be left forever. Alexei froze in the middle of the room and did not find words. The Lord stated that it was he who ordered these chains to be brought here, and could not trust such a matter for demons. He was pleased that only people are in this place. All the Cyclops, which once changed their race, looked at the Lord gloomy. Alex noticed their reaction and warned not to take it too close to the heart. After that, he called Julia. Alec asked her if he could go to collect materials and make a weapon for sale. Julius answered confidently, assuring him that it was not necessary to worry. Alec also asked her to find out what minerals can be extracted in their territory. They were well aware of these materials. Julius asked ore, and the woman replied that she had worked in the mine for 3 years, so she knew a lot. Alec thanked Julia. Meanwhile, Alicia, holding Alec's slum, was slightly upset. It seemed that perhaps now in the future, they were no longer destined to travel together. Alec ordered Julia to only explore ORR and find out which ORR is in Tiaris. Julia briefly assured that she understood. Alec supported her, taking her hand. Alicia, seeing this scene, was genuinely surprised. Lisa rapidly ran to them and suddenly grabbed Alex for his free hand. Alex did not have time to understand what had happened. Alicia burst into tears and asked Alec why he leaves her. However, he, a little confused, replied that it was not true. Alex turned to other Cyclops, noting that he was counting on their support. In response, all the Cyclops assured him at the same time that he would not worry. Meanwhile, Alex was still holding Julia. Eli wondered where they were going. Then Alec took the hands of the girls standing with each other, and with them disappeared, moving to a completely different place. Julia has been a little stunned by a sudden teleport. They found themselves in a rocky area, much farther from the city. Alex explained that he tried to move them as far from the city walls, although it is known as the territory of demons. However, in his opinion, it is not so scary. Julius watched Alex's magic with enthusiasm, who moved everyone to a new place in a moment. Alicia proudly noted that Alex is a trifle he is much more capable of. Alex himself asked them not to admire them so frankly. Alicia asked Julia if she was allowed to use magic. With her head raised in pride, she added that she has holy magic. Julius froze, not finding words, and she reached out to him. A sign of darkness was clearly visible on it. She looked at her hand and confessed that she did not know exactly what her seal was, and was not sure what was about magic. Alec looked at the seal and recognized in it the symbol of the Hammer of Darkness, mule nearby. He explained that this seal is suitable for dark and lightning magic, and also noted that it can be used in blacksmithing. Julius surprised these words, and he asked if it was really so useful. Alec replied that he is not sure about dark magic, but she could definitely succeed in using lightning magic. Julius asked Alec with delight whether he was really using magic. Alec confirmed that it was, explaining that it is as natural for her as the use of ordinary magic. Alicia, meanwhile, stood away, sadly watching their conversation. In the end, Alicia could not stand and exclaimed that it was unfair, because she also wanted it. Ella solo respondió que Alicia podría en cualquier caso usar magia. Alicia confessed a bit confused that she just forgot about it. Julius sat down and thought about the magic of Alicia, trying to understand what could be useful to her teacher. Suddenly, while Alice and Alec argued, a big shadow was hanging over them, and it was Julius who first paid attention to it. Behind them grew a huge demonic snake that hangs like a giant shadow. Alec instantly mastered himself, pointed to the demon, and ordered Alicia to attack together. At this time, Julia embraced true horror before creating. Alec cut the snake in half with its darkness. The snake's body fell to the ground and froze right at Julia's feet. Alec paid attention to the new monsters and noted that the snake was not alone. Alicia, lifting her blade, rushed to attack on the winged monsters. While Alec and Alicia fought desperately with the demons, Julia stood, tight, and did not understand how to act. Alicia shouted at her, demanding to get up and master herself. Julia was attacked by a large crow. Frightened, she screamed, trying to drive the bird, but he only rushed to her. Julia lost her balance and broke out of the break. Alec saw it, but did not have time to save her. Therefore, but rapidly moved himself, Julia and Alicia to another place hidden under the rocks. The forest has already begun at the very foot of the rocks. The monsters remained above, looking out in search of fugitives. Alec, said with surprise that Librian still remained unharmed in spite of the large number of demons nearby. Upon learning of the location, Julius reported that it was here that it was captured by Imperial Knights, and now they are on the northern border of the possessions of the demons. Hearing this, Alec thought what to do now. Julius noted with some disappointment that they were teleported too far. Alicia in response noted that she did not know any terrain where so many demons would be found, because it is extremely difficult for ordinary demons to survive in such conditions. Aleka swept a slight confusion when he looked at the terrain, because different demons were visible in every corner. He mentally asked himself that it was a strange kingdom of demons, where every corner belongs to another creation. Alec glanced to the sky, where giant crowded demons were circling. I mentally noted, now it is clear why the Empire avoids this place. A large demon in the likeness of the cat appeared next to them, watching the aliens. They looked at him with horror. This demon rushed to them, but they still managed to escape from here. The rescue jump helped to disappear. However, with each subsequent jump in new places, they came to an increasing number of demons. After numerous jumps, they finally found the entrance to the cave and hid inside. The solid darkness prevailed, and all three, tired to the edge, sat silently nearby. Julius' anxiety noted that wherever they go, demons are everywhere. Alicia suggested that there may be no safe place at all, but Alec in response noted that the situation could not be so hopeless. Somewhere there must be a storage. Suddenly, in the minds of Alex, a demonic creature was very uncertain that she was afraid of darkness. She timidly asked him to add some light. Alec wondered in the mentally how it could happen that it is a demon, and it was afraid of darkness. The demon was only surprised to ask that in this strange. Then Alec confessed that he had not taken with him a lantern. Demosa suggested using magic. Alex mentally replied that he could not create, say, a firefly or a fiery ball, because he did not possess any of them. Then the demon pointed to Alicia, noting that it could take advantage of holy light. In response, she advised him to use him independently. Alicia noticed Alex's gaze to her, and felt excitement. Alex has uncertainly asked the demonstration whether he could take advantage of it. The Demeza replied that she had already mentioned it before. Demosa explained Alec that the owner was able to use any ability of his subordinates. Alec mentioned in surprise that she had not mentioned it before. Alec wondered if he would really be able to use these things, and later dare and said the spell of the holy light. Suddenly, a small ball of light appeared in front of him, illuminating only a limited space around. Elisha saw it and promised to help him. She also said the spell of the holy light, and then the sacred ball, which belonged to Alex, began to increase in size and rose up, illuminating the entire space. All this was made possible by Alicia. Alec was interested in whether the reason lies in the number of his followers. After all, after 30 more, its magical power increased. Alec believed that although these spells were not very powerful, they could be useful. Suddenly, Julius turned to Alicia, enthusiastically noting her extraordinary abilities. With an expression of irritation on her face, Julia confessed that she was fond of Alicia, but could not say the same thing about herself. She could not fight, and was very afraid. Julius cursed, begging for their forgiveness. Alec and Alicia looked at her. The attendees began to cheer her up. Alex assured that it does not matter that she could not fight, but he will be able to help Aura. Alicia also supported him, noting that all the fights could be safely entrusted with her. Alicia assured her that after sufficient workouts, she would be able to master magic, and later lightning. Julius looked at her with sincere gratitude, and tears shouted in her eyes. And suddenly from the depths of the cave appeared the face of a snake demon, which looked closely at them. At this point, Alec and Alicia noticed a terrifying face, while Julia wiped tears from her face, smiling. Julius turned, and without realizing what he saw, all around were horrified, and using the darkness of the darkness, rushed to another place. All three lay on the grass, exhausted after the next burst of adrenaline and clashes with the monster. Alec was already thinking that it was time for him to rest. In the evening, when it began to darken, all three reached the city safely. In the Alecles palace, went to the bath, where several servants helped him. They brought a towel and took care of his convenience. After bathing, Alec, Alice, and Julius gathered in a room tired of a busy day. Alec proposed to consider a more effective strategy. Julius was aware that she could not help his master. Alicia noticed her thoughtful appearance and called to herself. Alicia, with a warm smile, assured her that she could count on her, mentally noting that they were not a rival. Julius looked at her with admiration, and tears appeared in her eyes. Alicia advised her to make every effort to help Mr. Alec together. Julius agreed with her, and her mood has improved significantly. Then, gathering freedom, she strongly appealed to Alec to take some material. Taking a few pieces of fabric, Julius began to sew them quickly. As a result, he was already neatly and beautifully stitched mattress and pillowcase. She pointed to the mattress and explained that she had sewed him from the snake's skin, wishing Alex had a good rest and sleep. Oleg touched the mattress and was genuinely surprised by her skill. He admired that she created such a first-class product in just a few hours, and wondered what she was able to achieve, even in such conditions. Alec took her hands, praised her, noting that she was doing well, and thanked her for it. Alicia, watching this scene, paid attention to her delicate skin and still considered Julius as her opponent. Alec did not understand what she meant. There are always many visitors in the workshop during the day. One day, a man came to the room, carrying a sword and vagina in his hands. He reported that he learned. It was here that you can repair weapons. On it, in the wicker basket, carefully contains several pieces of snakeskin. Each of them is impregnated with magic. One of the buyers came to the man behind the counter to thank him. The knives purchased the day before were surprisingly sharp, and this undoubtedly appealed to her. However, Alec with a satisfied smile watches how the workshop thrives. Alicia stands nearby and notes that if they continue to work in the same rhythm, they will be able to secure a stable income. However, Alec does not share such optimism at all. His anxiety is noticeable to the naked eye. Even if they already have enough money for everything they need, the future should be taken care of in advance. After all, the number of people will increase, and perhaps their income will be lacking. Meanwhile, Alicia brings a whole bunch of books and scrolls to the table, reporting that she was able to find records of Tiara. Alec, looking at the map, understands that the castle is likely to be located on this island. He notes that they could survey the island and, if needed, overcome the demons that live there. Alicia notes, as soon as the sea subsides, the monster should also retreat. Then Alec decides to make this island the capital. He invites girls to travel immediately, and they are happy to agree. Yulia promises to show everything he is capable of this day. Ella is rapidly rushing into the arms of Alex. She understands that he wants to go somewhere, so he lifts him in his arms. Before sending Alicia with a charming smile, he extends her hand, offering the gentleman to take her hand, but he does not hear her words at all and sharply jumps forward. All four are in the forest, in unknown terrain. Alec approaches the cliff and looks carefully, approximately determining in which direction the Tiaris island is. He rotates and notices Alicia, which quietly murmurs something about his hand, looking sadly and extending his palm to him. At first, he looks at her with confusion. But later, he finally realizes that she means. He tells her that his magical power has increased, and now he no longer needs physical contact to jump. The words of the master impress her so much that tears begin to roll on the cheeks. She begins to cry out loud, shouting that it is absolutely unfair, and in the meantime, Julius is trying to somehow reassure her. When she manages to master herself, Alex reports that he will continue to move teleportation so as not to meet the demons. Since, during meetings with giant demons, Alec repeatedly uses a jump, he also has to become invisible to hide from them. Suddenly, Alicia points somewhere, trying to attract the attention of his master. Finally, there was a desirable island in front of them. Numerous structures were distinguished among the dense forests, and a majestic castle was standing above all. The streets were completely abandoned. They were overgrown with weeds and covered with a layer of dust. Alicia notes that the city turned out to be even larger than it hoped. Alec, looking carefully with LYU, notes that more than 100 people will be able to settle here. Looking around, he concludes that they are in the administrative area. Then he invites his companions to go to the city center. He notes that there are no demons left on the island, only small birds in size. Yulia's face has an unpleasant expression. She remembers the raven with disgust. Suddenly, Alicia shows somewhere sideways and is scared that she saw something horrific. It is a great frightening Julia until she realizes that it was only a joke. Alicia laughs at her, jokingly calling her a coward, and she is wondering why she did so at all, and later asks to do so not to do with the insult. Suddenly, Alec notices a sharp movement on the ground. Julius does not perceive his own words seriously. He seems to him that the gentleman also decided to make a joke, both from her and from Alicia. However, it is at this moment that both notice a small target on the floor. Suddenly, to their surprise, the mouse squeals loudly. For a moment, all three are raising their heads and noticing several fierce demonic crows from above, which are rapidly flying right on them. Alex frozen in stupor, not believing in his own eyes. It was difficult for him to realize that such a huge number of demonic crows appeared through the mouse. Alicia remained indomitable and collected, she boldly preparing for battle, noting that these demonic crows were not so much. She wants to deal with them as soon as possible to use their meat for dinner. Meanwhile, Julius is frightened by the crows, muds up and closes his eyes firmly. Suddenly, one of the crows grabs the mouse with sharp claws and lifts it a small calf above the ground. The frightened mouse squeals thinly. However, suddenly on the crow that had already taken the mouse, the blow is collapsed. The blade of darkness is opening the air. After the crow releases the mouse and falls on the back, and then rapidly grabs and escapes. After all, Alec, Alicia, and Julius defeated all demonic crows. Alicia looks at the bodies of crows and asks others what they should do with the remnants. Alec gets a dark cube and says that this time he will take them with him, because the smell of blood can attract other demons. He uses a black box to hide bodies. All this is observed by the mouse. She looks out from behind the corner and signs. Hearing the squeak, Alicia looks back and recognizes immediately. The mouse returned. Julie is not at all liked because it was the mouse who sent demonic crows on them. Alec inspects the mouse and notes that she is probably quite resourceful. He suggests that such a mouse can come in handy, so he suggests trying to catch it. Julius and Alicia are trying to catch the mouse together. But she is extremely clever, avoiding their hands. It lasts until Alec suddenly interferes. He suddenly jumps out and rushes the head just on the mouse. It does not have time to avoid collision and stuck inside his body. Alicia rejoices and praises Alicia with a smile for his work. Meanwhile, Julia is upset. She seems to be unnecessary again. At this point, Oleg takes the mouse, cautiously picking it up for the bundle. A frightened animal squeaks and tries to escape. Oleg tries to reassure her, assuring that no one will hurt her. Alex noted that, given her remarkable wit, he suggests that she conclude a contract with them. He also assured that he would not cause any harm. With a friendly smile, he suggests that the little one becomes his follower. The targets behave carefully, but still uncertainly, and slightly nods with the proposal. At this point, a Demosa with an ironic smile caps with Alec, throwing that he again calls all sorts of junk. Alec does not pay attention to her words. Meanwhile, Julius and Alicia watch the mouse with interest, which is confidently frozen in front of them. Alicia suggests that the mouse, like Alec, will not become human. Alec agrees with its assumption. But the next moment the mouse, which sat in front of them, suddenly grows several times. Frightened by looking around, she cannot understand what happened. Despite this, she never became a person, although Julius notes that she at least learned to stand on her hind legs. Suddenly, the mouse opened the mouth and spoke. She wondered what he did with him, Alec, and why he became so giant. Alec, Julius, and Alicia were extremely surprised that the mouse suddenly spoke. Oleg, something uncertain, explains that all this happened because he became her follower. The target accepts the explanation. He notes that Alec looks strong enough, and therefore will gladly try to serve him. Alec praised the rodent for how well he learned to speak. He promised that if he helps him, he would now be feeding it regularly and generously. After these words, Alec reached out an appetizing lunchbox that Amelia prepared for him. Seeing the appetizing cooked food, the rodent is glad and without hesitation. After that, Alec turns to him and is interested in his name. He is surprised to ask what it means, because he hears about such things for the first time. Then Alec takes his name. He proposes to call a rodent Tia because he lives in Tiaris. The rodent himself replies that he has nothing against such a name. Having coped with this case, Alec addresses the question of which building on this island is the largest. On his answer that this is a simple question, and he only points to the necessary direction, Alec, Alicia, and Julia directed the views in that direction. Tia, in turn, warned them. It is worth staying away from this place and not approaching too close. Alec, not hiding the curiosity, asked why they could not come there. Tia, faded with fear and trembling, said that a fire beast lives in those parts. She added that as soon as her crows approached that place, everyone immediately fell dead and not dared to fly closer. Alex thinks about the words of Tia about the fiery beast. Julius, somewhat frightened by her stories, suggests that this creature can be a spirit. Hearing this, Alicia with confidence invites the owner to rely on her in this case. Alec is happy to agree and says that in this case they should go there immediately. Julius is clearly upset with Herd and looks frightened. Alicia confidently goes in front, and Alec steps without being behind. Behind, with fear, Julius moves. He timidly asks whether there will be ghosts, and does not seek to go at all. After reaching the right place, Alec, Alicia, and Julius are surprised to look at a huge, massive castle. Unlike others, it does not seem abandoned or dirty. There are many balloons around the castle in the air, in which something dark moves slowly. Julius screams and begins to tremble with fear. Alicia points out that if Julius is so scared, then let them wait for them here. However, Julius immediately denies. Her voice is still trembling with horror, but she insists that he will certainly go with the owner. She regrets bitterly that she did not bring spare linen. Approaching the great castle, Alicia confidently and boldly beats all the spirits circling around. At that time, Julius was watching this with anxiety, and Eleg with interest. It was then that Tias appeals to Eleg, noting that this building once belonged to the local lord. Ta smiles, glad that his new comrades have turned out to be so strong and easily overcome all obstacles. He also admits that he can no longer wait when he enters the castle with them. He appeals to Alex to allow them to join them. Tia notes that he knows much more than it seems, and will certainly come in handy. In addition, for such delicious food, he is ready to serve his master forever. Alex gladly agrees to bring him with him. Alec gently opened the creaking door. Alicia with Julius open them, and through the hole into the dark corridor, sunlight breaks. However, even after that, the corridor is dominated by the darkness, so Alicia decides to use the holy light. There were many knights in the hallway, but one of them was different from the rest. Julia, frightened, confessed that it seemed as if one of the armor moved. Alicia argued that they were all the same, while Alec assumed that it could be guards. On the side of the corridor are knights, each with a sword in their hand. Most of them have a simple look armed with thin blades, but among them are those who are noticeably different from others. Alec extends their hands. He notes that the knights stopped acting when there are no more people left in the building, but the traces of magical power are still noticeable here. Alec assumes that this armor can be made of magic ore, although it does not feel any magic in it now. He notes that the armor is extremely strong and resistant to magical attacks. Watching Alec touch his magic armor, Alicia feels anxious. She suspects that it can be dangerous. Julius is also worried, but Alec assures both of them that there is no reason to worry. Suddenly, something strange happens inside the armor. In an instant, heavy armor comes to life, snars sword and rushes rapidly at Alec. Alicia has time to intercept the impact in time and stop the blade with his sword. While the armor is swollen for the next stroke, Alec instantly cuts it in two blades of darkness. However, despite all the power of the attack, both halves of armor are fused without any trace of damage. Alicia and Alec are surprised to look at the intact armor without understanding how possible. In the end, it becomes clear, armor probably just absorbed the magic directed at them. However, Alec is aware that with current magic levels, it is impossible to destroy this armor. All the strength will have to be used. At the same time, he understands that in this case, the building itself can be affected. At this point, Julius exclaims, and suddenly attacks the armor from the back, waving his helmet with one powerful blow. She asks with anxiety if everything is fine with the owner, while the armor is still standing. It seemed without a helmet they were no longer able to move. In a moment from the place where the helmet just lay, a transparent mucus creature with a dark core crashes slowly. It stretches its parts in different directions, trying to get out of the armor. Alicia no longer looks hostile. She watches in surprise how mucus flows from the armor. She is surprised that it was the mucus in the lads that was the same guard. Alec looks at it in confusion, without understanding how he did not feel the presence of mucus in armor before. Suddenly, all three realize that a whole bunch of jelly-like mass was formed around them. After evaluating the situation, Alec decides to use the seal to put an end to everything as soon as possible. He chooses a shadow wave, the magic of mass destruction. But before the spell can work, the Elo suddenly appears from nowhere and strongly rushes to the armor. He jumps into the embarrassment from which mucus has just climbed. The armor shudders for a while and then fades and remains fixed for a few seconds. Suddenly, Elk appears from the armor. He grabbed another mucus membrane that stuck to the armor and pulled it outward by force, pulling with him. Eleg pulls mucus to the master. He moves strangely as if trying to say something, but Eleg does not understand the content of these gestures at all. At this point, Tia intervenes. He explains the master's words of Ient, and reports that he asks to enter into an agreement with the Slim. Yalisha is offended and reproaches Elish for hesitant. Alicia agrees with her. According to him, it is the courage that Julia pushed him to this step. Although then he still quite calmly rested in Julia's arms. Alex, with a smile, notes that he does not mind contracting with mucus. In addition, it can use armor in which they once lived, and which they will not now need how materials or just sell. Alicia is loudly warning her mistress, and then cleverly leads her to her feet and stands in front of her. At this point, the armor comes into motion again. She takes the sword and directs him towards Alicia and the rest. At this moment, the girl tells her comrades that this place is clearly not intended for beginners, so he is strongly coming forward and standing in defense of others. While the armor stood, directing the giant sword towards all three, there were suddenly numerous spirits around which were still freely out of the walls of the building. Julius, with anxiety, watches the spirits that suddenly appeared around, and Alec does not take his eyes from living armor, which is now able to move even without mucus inside. At this point, Alicia hides the owner and tries to protect him with all his might. It reflects the strokes of the armor, although it is not easy for her. A huge sword, which is owned by armor, does not compare with her thin steel blade. He recalls how he had previously attacked the armor with the blade of darkness, then his blows were absorbed by flame tongues. Suddenly, an unexpected idea flashes in the mind. He appeals to Alec to immediately gather all the snails. Tia, frightened, is already turning to the way out, approaching the hind legs and insisting that you should run. Julia also feels fear, but hesitates. Alicia still stubbornly fights. At this time, Alicia still fought with live armor. Fatigue was already felt in every movement. She could beat the blows, but with disappointment she understood that the usual iron sword was not able to withstand her opponent's weapons. While Alicia was working focused, the spirits were squeezed on all sides. She noticed them too late and was no longer evading. Alec came to the rescue, saving it. He uses a dark box to get rid of all close ghosts. Alec assures Alicia that he neutralizes the spirits himself, so she should not worry about it. She is not distracted by battle, but finds a moment to thank her teacher for support. At some point, Alicia can move a thin blade into a narrow gap between the plates of the armor. The blade penetrates into the left shoulder of the enemy. Gathering the last forces, Alicia sharply pulls the sword back, and with this blow separating his left hand with a part of the armor. Julia, who still remained with his comrades, was glad that Alicia managed to injure the living armor. Meanwhile, Alec used a black box to get rid of his hand. Alicia rejoices, because thanks to this strategy, they will be able to quickly cope with live armor. However, quite unexpectedly, all the cracks of the armor begin to break through powerful flame streams, spreading in different directions. Ulisa tries to hide from him somehow. Alex sounds that she should stop. Now it is better for them to retreat and restore strength. If the flames continue to seep out of the armor, the whole mission can break and fail. Julius watches the beams with horror, and the panic shouting, pointing to the ceiling, and afraid that everything is covered by fire. The flame jet rushed to Alicia, which lost its vigilance for a moment and did not have time to protect itself. However, Alekiv manages to close it. It is stretched in front of her, like a shield, protecting it with a person's body. The parts of his body fall into the flames, slightly silenced. After that, Ella returns to her habitual appearance, exhausted and exhausted. Alicia is frightened and worried about him, noting that it was too dangerous for him, because he has a water element. Hearing the mention of the water, Alex seems to remember something. The idea flashes in his head. He turns to TIA and orders to convey the order to the Mucusians. They should be prepared. Excited and frightened, mucous membranes are quickly stuck. Alec realizes that there are about 100 snails around, and so much is enough to cope with the fire. So he decides to act in his design. Turning to Alicia, Alec is loudly leaving her back. She obediently executes the instruction, after which Alex extends his hand and applies a water bomb. From the floor, a powerful stream of water is raised directly under the living armor, which instantly envelops it on all sides. All the space around the water was filled. While living armor was rapidly in the captivity of fluid, everyone watched this sight in a silent surprise. Alec himself, who launched a water bomb, felt the most confusedness. For a while, the water flow stopped. Only armor remained in its place, which fell on the carpet in a moment. Where they fell, a large dark wet spot from the water burst on the carpet. Alicia approached inanimate armor and looked carefully. She noticed that the water, which had previously flown, completely extinguished all the tongues of the flames. Julius also watched Armor with curiosity. Alec with joy, however, with some excitement, considered his seal, mentally rejoicing that his idea worked flawlessly. At this point, Alicia states that he wants to deprive the Armor of the extremities, just in case. Julius, noticeably frightened, goes away from the Armor. Alicia in the heat asks to make sure that Armor will never be able to get back on his feet. After that, Alicia raises both broken Armor hands and begins to shake them quickly in the face of Julia, while making scary sounds. Julius feels a terrible fright and screams loudly at fear. Alicia again offends him again. Without holding back emotions, Julius exclaims to his girlfriend loudly, once again begging to stop such jokes. But in response, Alicia only points out that it was just an innocent trick. Throughout this conversation, Alicia and Julius stood his back to the Armor, which was quietly lying on a wet carpet. But suddenly the Armor suddenly rose behind them. She shakes from side to side. Some of her extremities have already been detached. Suddenly the inside of the Armor breaks out. The soul is a break. It was the voice of a man who was painting in pain. In a moment, Julius was behind Alicia, covered by fear. Alicia, on the contrary, courageously took an anterior position, ready for battle. She could not understand why they were talking, and stubbornly refused to believe it. At this moment, the Armor continued to swing in different directions, and the voice of a man heard from the inside. He complained that his body was not obeyed and could not move properly. Gathering with thoughts, Alec finally turns to Bran, asking if she hears him, but irritatedly replies that he hears perfectly. However, she adds that she sees absolutely nothing. Hearing this, Alec wraps his gaze to a pile of slugged, gathered behind him around the helmet lying on the floor. He suggests that due to its absence of armor, they are not able to see. He lifts a helmet and puts it over his armor. After that, the branches say that she now shows what is happening around. She adds that she recognizes the Lord's extent and surrounding places. Seeing Alec in front of him, the Armor notes that she did not expect to meet a little girl here. It seems that the words of the Armor did not like Alec, so he decides to introduce himself to clarify the situation. He confidently asks Branui to tell in detail everything she knows about this place. Upon learning that the prince himself stands, Armor shows a genuine surprise. She bowed politely, asking the prince to forgive her. Later, she introduced herself, calling her name Selena Toshi Fraps. Alec suggests that Selena was once a knight under the old empire. Therefore, he appeals to her to tell her what happened on this island. Selena says that she once headed the 6th Squadron of the Imperial Knights. She recalls how Tiaris became a target for the attack at that time, and there was only one person. A woman dressed in everything black appeared in front of her. She lost without any effort both Selenium and all her subordinates. In her mind, memories of past events were flashed. Alec suddenly realized that all the soldiers who fought next to Alicia died only one person. Selena continued her story, remembering how mysteriously turned into a living Armor. The only thing she remained was to resist all the invasion. But then her body suddenly lost the ability to move, and she plunged into a deep sleep. At this point, Demoza realizes with horror that Selena's soul is locked in Armor. She is disturbed and does not know what to do next. At that moment, Alec thinks that a woman who has captured Tiara alone is not a human being. Her reflections are suddenly interrupted by the appearance of Julia and Alicia standing behind. In their hands they have parts of Selena armor. They turn to the mentor, as if hesitant what to do with these things. He orders to return all the parts to their seats, and both immediately follow the instructions. Selena thanks the girls with a gesture, noting that she is so much better. But in a moment her hands began to move on their own, causing the girls to strike. In panic, she confesses that her body does not obey her at all. Alicia begs her to stop, but in response hears that he can't do it. Then Alec uses a blade of darkness, depriving Selenium all extremities. She does not express neither the anger nor the hatred, only sincerely apologize for everything that has happened. Alec understands that she probably acted under someone's order, forced to attack all living things. Selena tries to justify himself to Alec, but he interrupts her and insists that she signs a contract with him as soon as possible. He is embarrassed by his words. Selena does not understand what it is about, and then Alec explains. Having concluded this agreement, she will become his follower. He suggests that perhaps that is when she can be released. However, Selena confidently states that she swore allegiance to the Empire, and therefore the prince. Therefore, she asks him to enter into a contract with her. Alec extends his hand and signs the contract, and at the same moment the magic kept Selenium in captivity is dispelled. She becomes a young girl with long dark hair again. Selena looks in amazement, not believing what is happening. She cannot understand that her body has become the same as before. Carefully moving her fingers and hands, she examines her limbs, which return to the place. After that, Selena took God by her hand. A happy smile shone on her face, and tears of joy appeared in her eyes. She thanked Alec loudly and sincerely for his help. Alicia, watching Selena holds the hands of his master, curves from dissatisfaction. Alicia is in no hurry to pointing Selenium to impolite, in the end, but only touched the prince, a representative of the royal family. Selena Zanyakal apologizes for her behavior. Alec is watching this stage with a smile. Alex decides to go to the case and appeals to Selena to show them an island. Selena agrees instantly and happy. However, immediately after that, she allegedly notes that he did not even remember the names of the island in so many years. Julius and Alicia are hesitant whether she can be trusted. In response, she only laughs without sharing their concern. Alec told her that Tiara has been completely abandoned for many decades. However, instead of details, he only noted that Selena would soon see everything with his own eyes. Therefore, Selena confidently goes to one of the door, leading the whole group. Entering one of the rooms, travelers solidify in front of a disappointing picture. All the furniture here is crushed and torn into pieces, and the windows in the windows are separated by sharp debris. The room has a solid mess. Alex, Alicia, and Julius look at this picture with fear. Alicia suggests that everything is likely to be guilty of black, which was previously mentioned by Selena. Alec agrees with her. Looking carefully at the dried human skeletons and single bones, scattered fate. Around them are fragments and individual parts of broken weapons. Selena stands with her back to everyone, firmly squeezing small shoes in his hand, covered with dust and dirt. She is silent from the beginning, so Alec takes her away, trying to find out what happened to her. Selena looks at the shoe with sadness, gently holding it in his hands. In her voice, a grief sounds when she confesses. Every time she sees all this, she is constantly persecuted. She could not protect anyone. She says that a woman in black destroyed everyone without exception, both knights, women, and even children. Selena notes that none of them deserved such death. She also recalls that she has been a business with many travelers more than once. During this story, tears appear in the eyes of Selenium. She stops without finding words to continue. Alec and the rest of the audience look at her silently, and in their views, the pity is glowing. Suddenly, Selena confesses that many years ago she had to die with her friends. Listening to her, Alec smiles gently, trying to cheer. He cautiously translates the conversation to another, noting that they should be rejoiced at least because it was possible to find an administrative building that has not yet been destroyed. He notes that now that there are no fire spirits, the island can be cleaned of monsters. Alec agrees with that. The Lish looks at the old room and notes that they have a lot of work ahead before people can settle here. Then Alex notes that in this case, in the near future, they only take advantage of a profit from a shop in Rebellion. Alicia proposes to go back. Alex agrees with her, casting a worried look towards Selena. He calls Selenium, which stands by the window with sadness in his eyes. Hearing that she is being approached, she looks at Alec. He reports that it is not possible to live here yet, and asks her to organize those who already live in the settlement. He says he would like Selena to become a defender of Tiaris. These words are stunning her. Selena, still surprised, asks, and Alec only confirms what has been said. He emphasizes that it was Selena who was destined to take responsibility and protect the residents of the city from the invasion of demonic crows. Hearing this, Selena immediately became serious, full of confidence. She assured that they could rely on her completely. She would never let them down. Selena squeezes a fist filled with determination. This time she will certainly be able to protect the inhabitants of the island. She joyfully addresses Alec, wondering where her new settlers are now. She appeals to her fellow citizens with a radiant smile, reporting that he is appointed from now on. She also presents and pronounces her name. However, Selena's speech suddenly breaks away as she lowered her eyes and meets her eyes with her fellow citizens. In the common hall, under the terrace, where Selene, Julia, Elasia, and Alex stood, a huge crowd of mice mixed with mucus came on the floor. Selena fades for a moment, not understanding what is happening. It begins to squeeze on the head, the body covers trembling, and around the endless squeak of mice and a characteristic tract of mucus. After that, Selena asks that for a crowd of mice and mucus he gathered here instead of the usual inhabitants. Immediately later, she faints, and it is not a joke frightened by Julius. Waking up after fainting, Selena stood quietly among her fellow citizens. A smile played on her face, and she, holding a document in her hands, reported that in total, about 1,000 mice and snails live on the island. She noted that this is the whole population of the island. Demosa watches all with genuine curiosity. It reminds Alec that earlier, when Cyclops joined him, his magic force has doubled. She thinks how much the magical power of her master will grow. After all, although he concluded a contract with hundreds of mice and snails, these creatures are too weak. Demosa was annoyed and dissatisfied with the silk, claiming that they almost did not give the owner any magical power, so she considers them absolutely useless. Moreover, he is even a little offended, and notices to her that she does not fit to judge which of them is in vain, because his new supporters can still be useful. Hearing this, she instantly ignites anger and requires he to repeat his words. Elisha distracts Alec from the conversation. There is anxiety on her face, and a small snail was quietly resting in the arms. She is concerned that snails need water to live. After adding that mice, it is also necessary for existence. Unfortunately, for Selena and the numerous new residents of her country, Tiara Island was almost devoid of natural resources. There is very little edible resources here, and there is an endless sea surface around the island, but this water is unsuitable for consumption. There are also many land on the island, however, they are not at all suitable for any agricultural activity. Then Selena offers her own solution to this problem. It lifts the finger to the sky, where numerous demonic hooks are circling. However, Tia strongly opposes this proposal. He, with a desperate cry and tears in his eyes, states that this should not be done, because he does not imagine how mice can hunt for huge, bloodthirsty crows. After that, the initiative takes on Selena. With a smile on her face, she confidently states that she can safely entrust her with this task. She sincerely seeks to help them as a defender of Ari's island. However, to the surprise of the girl, that does not support her plan. With despair on his face, he notes that nothing will work out. Although it is strong, he doubts that she will have the strength to produce so much food on her own to feed all the rats. Selena in despair falls on her knees, depressed by the words that did not appreciate her aspirations to become the island's protector. Alec, standing nearby, is conceived in the sky, plunging into his own thoughts. After a short pause, he turns to Julius, who was near Alicia. Alex turned to Julia and said he would like her to produce many small crossbows for mice. Hearing this, she slightly frightened her face with her hands and made something muttered, embarrassed. Hearing these words, Julia immediately changed the facial expression. She realized that the gentleman entrusted her such a difficult task because she believes in her. In addition, she now has the opportunity to bring him real benefit for the first time. A smile appears on her face and she confidently agrees to work. She is about to transfer the order to the workshop, assuring that he will be fulfilled. Julius rejoices in the fact that it can finally be useful. Then Alec gets a dart cube, allowing Julius to pick up all the materials that can be useful. In addition, he gives her the feathers and beaks of Voronov, the defeated earlier. It is really happiness to have all the necessary materials at hand, while Selena is watching all this from her back. She understands that Alex's plan is to equip the mice with everything they need to produce food on their own. Then she offers her help in the proper training of mice hunting. Alex willingly supports this idea, and Tia, having heard their conversation, tiredly squeezes, already imagining all the difficulties that are waiting for him. He was scared if they were really waiting for mice to fight the demons. However, Selena, noticing his anxiety, tries to encourage him. He assures that there is nothing to worry about, because she will be nearby and will help with training. Alex smiles, looking at it. He is well aware that together with the commanding qualities of Selena and cyclopic crossbows, they exactly threatens. He again recalls that his strength increases directly in proportion to the number of supporters who join it. The more followers he has, the greater his magical power. Subsequently, when the power of the owner grows, his supporters also gain power. Demeza confidently supports this course of thoughts. Alec notes that even mice will now be able to hunt demonic crows. Turning to Tia, he adds that until the crossbows are ready, they will help together to have food. In response, Tia only squeals quietly. He assures that he understood everything, and notes that in this case, they only have to wait for the appearance of offspring. Alec agrees with him. After that, he turns to Alec, asking him to warn the mucous membranes from any ill-advised action, while Alec himself and others are powerful. Hearing this, Alec pleases joyfully. Then Alex notes that now they should think about the water source. Hearing this, Ta voice her idea. There is a lot of water underground. While he speaks, he stands in front of a hatch that is built into the ground. Hearing his story about water underground and noticing a hatch in the ground, he concludes that underground channels are underground. Tia only looks at him. He assures that nothing knows about any channels. Selena suddenly remembers something important. She says that there was a capital on the island once, so there should be channels with drinking water. These words are surprising in Alicia, Alec, and Julius. With an expression, Julius is astonished on the face of Julius, if that's the case. Then Alec explains that during the Old Empire, such channels could exist. Alicia, meanwhile, thinks about the considerations of her comrades. Alec looks around, and suddenly his gaze stops at something unexpected. In the distance, he notices a small column that protrudes from the ground near the wall. In fact, it turns out to be a crane under which a small container stands. Its surface is covered with dirt and rust. Everything looks long, forgotten, and worn for years. Suddenly, a dark drop of unknown fluid protrudes from the edge of a long, dried crane. Immediately after it appears from the tap with noise, a powerful flow of fluid begins to rage. Despite the thick viscosity of the black fluid, it turned out to be a lot, and it spread rapidly. Selena, frightened, hides behind Alec and asks a trembling voice that it is a liquid. Alec is unexpectedly aware of something. Anxiety appears on his face. He does not want to believe in what is happening, and, alarmed, he turns to Alicia to understand the situation as soon as possible. Alicia instantly guesses the intentions of her master. She extends her arms forward, going to send the spell to the mysterious fluid. In a moment, in the place of a dark, thick liquid, clear, transparent drops appear, and all the water in the tap becomes crystal. Alicia closes his eyes and puts her hands, finishing the magic. Selena is surprised to watch what happened. Alec goes closer to the source and inspects it carefully. He understands that his guesses have been confirmed. Alec believed that dark power was hidden inside this magic, which is why it seemed so thick, dark, and at the same time inappropriate for the dark. He turns to that and asks him together with other mice to try water. That one agrees. He explains that they can drink water or use leaves to drink. Several mice were happy to drink water. Make sure that the water was safe. He turned to the gentleman and assured that everything was fine, so the water could be safely consumed. Alicia suggests that these leaves may belong to the sacred tree. Selena also carefully examines the sheet and agrees. This is quite possible. She adds that she heard. In the Empire, there was a small supply of water infused on the leaves of this tree. He says he needs to inspect the place where the water begins. Alec appeals to that to carry it through the sewer. In response, he signals the consent of a short bip. Alec goes there with that, Selene and Alicia. And meanwhile, Julius went to make crossbows. They all descend stairs leading to a sewer filled with dirty water. Despite the fact that Tia is leading the group through this maze, he confesses that he has never been here before. Alec notices that the room is getting too dark, so he decides to add light. Having extended his hand forward, he chooses to use the sacred light. Alec expected to see the dull and weak light, the same as when he first tried this spell. However, to the surprise of the guy, this time the glow was much brighter. His dazzling light was so powerful that he involuntarily closed his eyes and tried to hide from shine. Instead, Selena, who was behind, did not have time to turn away and looked straight into a bright glow. Selena frozen behind him, widely open her eyes, inseparably staring at the bright light, without even moving. The fact is that selenium is still considered a living dead, and Alec used the holy light on it. Because of this, he almost expelled her until Alice tried to keep Salen, seeking help from his mentor. Alec stopped using the holy light as soon as he saw that Selena had begun to recover. When the situation improved, he sighed relieved. He did not hope that he would become so strong, that he would even be able to expel the runny nose with the power of light. Now he realizes that we should treat these gifts. Elisha looked concerned. Quietly and confused, she noted that her mentor had already mastered the holy magic so skillfully that he even surpassed her, although he once took this skill from her. She says with sadness that he will no longer need her master. In response, Alec tries to reassure her. He convinces that it is not at all, and assures that he will always need it nearby. Selena, who has already come to her senses, eavesdrop on their conversation. She decides to intervene, and she is happy to smile, assures that her gentlemen have nothing to worry about. After all, in the event of danger, it will inevitably protect it with fiery magic. Hearing about the fiery magic of Selena, Alec and Alicia were immersed in memories. Before their eyes, the episode of the battle flashed when Selenium was buried in armor suddenly ignited. Powerful flame streams broke out of her body and almost turned the whole building into ashes. Selena does not seem to remember what is happening, so she cannot understand why the attendees are reacting exactly. After that, Alicia asks Selena to demonstrate her seal, and he agrees without hesitation. Selena, proud with her seal, with a burning look, declares that her sign will be blocked and throbbed. The seal of Dana enhances martial skills with fiery magic, as well as enhances the forces of the closest allies. Hearing this, Alicia points out that it is not surprising that they were so hot. But as soon as they say these words, she is in a hurry to correct, specifying that it was really very warm. Alec decides to translate the conversation, and when pointing forward, proposes to move on. The whole group continues to move, and to the left of them, sewage water is stormy. The water in the channel moves at extraordinary speed. In one place, the stream is so strong that the water is split from the channel and touches Alec. Only then does this rapid flow in the eye for the first time. Alex is thinking about this and asks out loud from where such a powerful current could appear. Alicia points out that the water does not smell the sea, and suggests that there may be another source of water somewhere underground. Ty goes closer to the water and looks into it, noting that the stream always behaves equally. It flows with a speedy, frantic speed. Alec is surprised from where so much water can come from, that even in the rain and in the sunny bottom, the flow does not lose power. It is an unusual room that resembles a circle. Its ceiling also has round outlines. The whole room is a huge round pool filled with murky sewage water, which is actively raging in this ominous and strange tank. Alec assumes that this place is the source of all water, which is so gently flowing through the sewer. He notes that the leak is located just in the center of this small puddle. Alicia notices. Under the water smooth, the glow of the sacred tree is looking. It is a small trunk, from which thin, completely leafless branches. Selena confirms that this fragile sprout is a truly sacred tree. However, neither Selena nor Alicia understand what happened to him, and most importantly, why the tree became absolutely black. Both women are clearly concerned and excited. Suddenly, a powerful stream of dark magic begins to leak out of the sacred tree through the surrounding water. Ty covers fear, and Alex is in a hurry to warn his comrades, trying to escape from the fierce influx of magical power. He approaches Selena and Alicia and confidently states that he is able to protect them all three from dark magic. In addition, he emphasizes Alicia that the purification of the sacred tree from evil power is a matter that needs to be done at any cost. Alicia immediately understands the order of his master and immediately takes the case. She pulls her hands forward and focuses, going to use the same spell that has previously purified the water on the surface. Suddenly, Alicia feels that something is going wrong. Despite all her efforts, she notices the spell does not work as it would be. Surprised and a little embarrassed, Alicia tells the satellites that she is likely to lack the strength. She notices that darkness comes much faster than they manage to dispel it. Alec assures her that he will try to restrain this darkness to make the forest easier to purify the water. She tells the satellites that the water has become transparent. Alex and Alicia are clearly surprised and frightened at the same time, because they are aware that water could not be purified so quickly, despite all their efforts. Suddenly, an unfamiliar figure appears among them, among the clubs of dark magic. In the air, a ghost that emerges from dusk. Alec is surprised to the depths of his soul. He did not expect to meet the ghost in such a place. Selena, on the contrary, does not feel the slightest fear. Its appearance even inspires the fight. Alec realizes that hellish fire is the most powerful magic, so he exclaims to Selena so that she does not use her strength. After all, with such power, Selena is able to destroy everything around. Instead, he turns to Alicia for help, wanting to get rid of the ghost. He asks her to impress the spiritual core of the ghost with its holy element. Alicia is asking, because it seems to hear about the existence of such a nucleus for the first time. Alec explains to her that the spiritual nucleus is a giant stone inside the body. Alicia, having understood the order, prepares for the attack. Selena silently monitors everything that is happening. Alec applies the darkness of the ghost, trying to harm it and at the same time protect against the dark magic it sends. Selena watches his struggle with enthusiasm. She watches how he confidently holds the barrier and uses a cube to scatter dark magic. After that, her look stops on a ghost. His body was already very distorted. Selena notes that most of the body of the ghost has already crumbled, but despite this, the spiritual core has not yet appeared. Alicia is silent. She closes her eyes and presses her hand to his forehead. Alicia tries to focus, but the head is already beginning to ache. After evaluating the situation, Alicia still finds a solution. Selene quickly picked up her sword. She then appealed to Alicia to use holy magic on her weapons. At first, Alicia did not quite understand what they wanted from her, but in a moment she realized and reached out. After that, the massive selenium sword flashes bright light. She confidently takes it with both hands, occupies a fighting rack, and prepares for a fight. After that, Selena confidently shifts the sword in his hands and without delay goes rapidly to the ghost, preparing for a direct attack. Alec and Alicia open their eyes with surprise, escorting her eyes. Going closer, Salen finally gets a closer look at the ghost body. There, under his cloak, a dull light flicks in the bones. This is a spiritual nucleus. The only decisive jump in Selena flies above the surface of the water and sweeps past the ghost, causing an accurate blow directly into his spiritual nucleus. After that, the body of the ghost crumbles and gradually disappears. The remains of his body are scattered, and many small spirits appear from each part. At that moment, Selena does not even rotate. She is confident with her back to the enemy, lowering the sword, is firmly convinced of her own victory. She turns to her companions, and her look flashes with joy. Therefore, Selena steps on the edge of the rock and descends on one knee. She worshipped her prince, as if reporting to him about her perfect service. Alec looked at Selenium enthusiastically, opening his mouth and opening his eyes wide that seemed to glow from the inside. Alicia, standing behind him, watched this with a strange expression. In her look there was clearly no hint of admiration. But suddenly, under her fifth, the fragile edge of the rock collapses, and within a moment Selene loses balance and flies down rapidly. It does not even have time to exclaim. The body is already plunged into the water. Alicia and Alec were frozen on the spot, not bringing his eyes from a small water clip, which was formed after the selenium fell into the water. Looking anxiously at the surface, they were looking forward to when their girlfriend, Viren. Many bubbles appear on the surface for a while, and in the end, selenium can emerge. With the help of a small, simple ladder attached to the wall of the pool, it climbs upstairs. Alicia leans to her and notes that the way in which Selena has overcome the ghost was truly impressive. Alex supports her, adding that the commander of the Order of the Night should not be expected. The mood of selenium is significantly improved. It is raised. It is awkwardly scratching the nape. She is a little ashamed to give up compliments, so she explains that she only coped with their support. After that, Alicia approaches the tree, which is now clearly visible, because the solid flow of dark water no longer wraps. Looking at the trunk, she notes that the tree seems to have died with a ghost. The tree seems completely exhausted. Its trunk is thin and infirm, and the bare branches are completely blackened. Alec notes that probably the tree just faded. Returning to Alicia, he appeals to her just in case to check the dried sacred tree with the help of holy magic. Alicia obediently executes the order and calls for holy magic, directing it to the tree. Thanks to the holy magic used by Alicia, the tree came to life again. It returned its natural color. No trace of darkness remains. The branches of the tree have become strength and healthy. He notes that the living holy tree looks incredibly beautiful. Alec looks at the tree and his glow with the same happy baby smile. He says that this light helped revive the holy tree. Small drops of clean water circle in the air, vividly swinging from the source. Ta stretches his hands, collects a few drops on his palm, and then tips water. With a smile, it shares the news. This water is incredibly delicious. Alec agrees with his words. He adds that this water can be drunk without any danger, and it can even prepare a simple recovery potion. Selena extends hands, covered with many water drops, and does not hide the admiration of all the variety of the properties of this water. Tia rejoices with her, already anticipating their important victory. Alec is happy to state that it is only necessary to clean the underground pipes, and there will be no problems with water supply in the city. At that moment, Alicia, holding Alec on her hands, notes that with such help, they will definitely succeed. Alec turns to that, because it was so quickly manage all the difficulties. Ty, having a little discord, rejects praise. After that, Alec stopped in the direction of a demons who lived in his mind. She seems to have guessed the reason for this look. She was spitting off. She wondered why he was looking at her. However, he just waved, assuring that nothing special. However, she becomes unbearable. And although it is very undesirable for her, in the end, she reluctantly recognizes her mistake. Mucus and mice are also very useful associates. Selena has taught mice patiently. She showed how to use the crossbows, how to aim and shoot. It's time to hunt. Mice hid in one of the buildings, gently pushing the tips of their crossbows from the windows. Many mice aimed at one prey, carefully waiting for the signal to the attack. Their target became a crow who sat quietly on the ground, not suspecting. Suddenly, Selena loudly orders to open fire, and at the same moment many arrows flies to the crow, ruthlessly destroying it. Tia, with a bow in her hands, joyfully celebrates her accuracy. She managed to kiss the target. Selena also genuinely rejoices in the student, and notices her success. However, hunting does not end with a victory over one opponent. In the end, Selena and Ta brought to their ruler a whole mountain of dead crows. Selena proudly informed His Highness that they managed to destroy all demonic hooks on the island. Alec is surprised to look at the whole of the bodies of demonic crows, while Alicia and Julius, who has already returned to their team, watch this spectacle with a smile and joy. Ty happily exclaims that they have coped, and he finally managed to take revenge on all the fallen comrades. Alicia smiles, noting what that fierce is that. Alec also encompasses a smile. He thinks that his behavior is probably influenced by selenium seal. Julius lenses to that and reports that this is only a prototype, but if he is completely satisfied with the result, that will be able to use it in the future. She also adds that thanks to new materials we'll be able to provide such crossbows of all mice. Alec smiles and thanks Julia for his work, noting that almost everything is ready. Julia enthusiastically replies that in this case they will continue to work hard in the workshop. Alicia also points out that thanks to the tree growing in the channels, we now have a large stock of holy water. Selena adds that of all demonic crows can be obtained valuable materials that can be sold later. After listening to everyone, Alec is thinking and notes that this is enough for them. He notes that part of the work has already been done, because they managed to get rid of dangerous demons on the island. At the same time, he adds that surviving, feeding only by crows and holy water, they will undoubtedly not succeed. After that, he proposes to engage in the organization of fishing. Selena notes that for mice this task will be difficult, but the idea as a whole seems good. After that, Selena expresses her proposal, a charming click. Therefore, Alec asks Selena to tell more about this charming ore. She explains that her armor is made of mithril. It also adds that there are caves under the island that connect it to the mainland. Selena proposes to establish a mine there. Given the number of resources, this may be a favorable solution. She plans to use the guards obtained to protect the guard at the Lord Palace. In addition, Selena is convinced that she will be able to control them, because she once already commanded this detachment. Alex is thinking about her words. He notes that 1,000 years ago, when the nucleus was whole, they could move forever. Then Alicia adds that these forces can be used not only for protection, but also for the destruction of demons on the mainland. Then Julius confidently points out that the concept of magic can be trusted to define her. After that, another trip was waiting for them. Selenium shows the comrades the path to the mines. They descend together long spiral stairs leading to depth. Finally, the door appears in front of them. However, looking more closely, they notice a little unusual. A lock hangs on the door, and it is closed. Selena points out that this castle is undoubtedly made of forging iron. After a brief reflection, she proposes to use her own sword to break the lock. However, Alec immediately rejects her from this idea, noting that in this case, she will inevitably destroy everything around her unrestrained destructive force. Alec leans to the lock and inspects it carefully. He notes that it is not an ordinary castle. Alicia, also looking at the mechanism, notes that only 10 experienced magicians will probably be able to open such. Hearing this, Julius covers anxiety. She is also upset because she seems to mean that they do not have a way. However, it is at this moment that Alec calmly orders the door to open, and they humbly obey his word. Julius, Alicia, and Selena fade in place, looking at him silently. Subsequently, everyone is surprised. In the hands of Alec is a castle, and then Gyrus explains that he has just applied dark magic to him. He confesses that he did not expect to open so easily. Selena notes how great he coped. Alicia does not hide the admiration of her master, but Julia assures that he will always serve him. Demos, having heard these passionate words, reacts significantly, while Alec is embarrassed by his comrades to stop pouring on him with compliments, because it only puts him in an uncomfortable position. Demois screams with indignation that she is also capable of such, but her desperate exclamation is heard only by Alec. He only mentally wants her to be silent and not spoiling this moment. At this point, Selena offers her team to move further, but suddenly she is stopped by new doors, which she seems to see for the first time. She desperately tries to open the door, not understanding why they are not exposed. Alicia appeals to Julius to help Selene. Together, they try to open the door, and in the meantime, Alec is interested in selenium. She notes that she does not recall that the door will be in this place. Alec suggests that the performers could appear there after Selene had been imprisoned in armor. He expresses the opinion. They may have been created to protect against a woman in black, which Selene mentioned. Afterwards, she thinks about his words. Selena explains that, according to her, during the attack of the woman on the island, all its inhabitants fled to the mainland through the caves, and to break away from the pursuers, they locked the door behind them. This time, Alicia notes that thanks to the forces of the Orcan Cyclops, it will be quite difficult for them to open this door. Julius, apparently exhausted, only sluggishly agrees with her. Selena, with tears in the eyes, confesses. To save people from the continent, they installed such a strong door, so she wants to do everything possible. Gathering strength, she tries hard, and finally, the door is exposed. The heavy door with the creaking was dissolved, and in a spacious, gloomy room finally shed a dull ray of light. However, no one was ready to see. They were faced with a dark hall, the floor of which was covered with human skeletons. Selena looked with horror at many old human bones, remembering in them her former inhabitants, whom she could not protect. Among all the bones and clothing, a small icon was visible. The thing was ancient. In some places the peas broke up, and the surface covered dirt and blood. Selena quickly raised the find, immediately recognizing in it the symbol of the Lord. Looking at the bones and skeletons, Julius realizes with horror that all these bodies belong to refugees from the island. Alicia carefully examines the remnants and concludes that many of them have been killed by arrows and cold weapons. Looking closer, among the pile of human remains, which lay almost close to each other on the floor, you could also see small children's skeletons, which also remain traces of weapons. Alec covers a terrible awareness. The door is not intended to protect people, but to keep someone. Suddenly, he hears someone exclaim his name. Looking at, he notices that the guards are already behind. They set his weapon to him and his companions just in the face, tightly overlapping the way to the exit. Alec manages to react instantly. It creates a barrel of darkness, and they are soon enveloped in the protective barrier of darkness. Selena tries to stop the attackers. It exclaims orders, presenting the detachment commander, and persistently demands to stop the attack. However, the guards do not pay attention to her words and do not stop the attack. One of them suddenly causes selenium strokes in the back with a sword. After that, she finally leaves attempts to reach or stop them. Selena approaches the rest, noticing anxiety on their faces. They are excitedly share. It seems that the guards suddenly began to attack everyone without any orders. Alec does not fully understand what they mean by these orders. She looks at other door and suddenly calls her master to pay attention to them. However, on the opposite side of the hall, opposite the place from which they just came from, there were another door, with the same castle that Alec had been easily opened before. After that, Alec appeals to Selena, asking whether she noticed any changes in the behavior or appearance of the guard. Selena looks carefully at the guards, evaluating their eyes. Suddenly, she finally notices the changes and notes that the color of their nucleus has become different. Selena points out that it has changed from red to purple. Alec is immediately aware of the importance of this change. Purple is the color of dark magic. After that, Alicia turns to Alec and advises him to decide to jump out of this difficult situation, in which they found themselves in a full environment. However, Alec denies, explaining that there is too little space, and he will not see exact coordinates. Then Selena, in a hurry, adds that consciousness should be located below. When they run through a narrow corridor, they found themselves in a huge cave. Her space was divided into several levels that descended down the ledges. At each of these levels, there were aisles that led in different directions. Elisha and Alec look at it with surprise, and Julius, with a clear hobby. Selena points out that this place is a Tiaric mental center. However, during this short conversation, the guards are already approaching, which have not been harassed for a moment. Alex turns to Selenium and asks to protect them. Selena immediately agrees and takes his object to his hands. After focusing, it directs its power, and a powerful stream of flames breaks out. Elysia recedes a few steps back, trying to protect against powerful flame flows. Without spending time, he, with the help of his seal, causes in the air many small black spheres that slowly float in the air. He uses a jump to these areas, so they are almost instantly transferred directly to the spiritual centers of the Keeper. While the guards are blinded and disoriented, Alec intends to quickly get rid of dark magic in their nuclei with these areas. Without spending time, he uses absorption to each of the guards. When dark magic was absorbed, the guards returned to their usual places. Selena noted that their nuclei became a former color again. Alicia and Julius stared at the alarm. Selena, in turn, is in no hurry to relax. There's a tense expression on her face. She, along with others, expects further guards of the guards. The guards stand still, raising their heads upwards, and do not even try to raise the owl's weapons. They remain completely inviolable. Make sure that the guards remain inviolable. Selena suggests that they probably return to their habitual state. They will not shift out of place without order. She stands in front of them and solemnly states that he is the commander of the Order of Knights. She also tells them the death of their former master, and announces that they are now officially under the rule of the sixth prince of the empire, Alec. These words were barely rising from her mouth, as in silence the crawling of the metal, which fell to the floor. The guards who still had a weapon hurriedly threw it to the ground, obeying the order of the commander of the Order of the Knights. Alicia noted that silence was finally prevailing, and Julius said with strange confusion that she was sure. This time, she would die. At this point, Alec pays attention to one of the objects in the cave. In particular, a stone that is strikingly different from the rest. It not only looks different, but also, as Alec notices, radiates the strongest true magical power. As soon as he notices it, the stone begins to move, and then the other stones around him rise. After all, when they all gather together, a giant goal appears. However, Alec reminds that they are far beyond the island. Alicia compliments. They are now in the territory of the demonic kingdom. Selena, not hiding surprise, notes that she had no idea about the same inside tiara. Julius, as always, is horrified. He only quietly and helplessly squeezes in the face of a giant monster. Meanwhile, the ghoul chooses his first victim. In the end, he chooses Julia, who stood closest to him, so he quickly reaches out to her. However, the first to approach the guards, the same as they tried to attack them a few minutes ago. Two guards intercepting the head of the golem, crossing the swords and firmly pressing it down. Julius is surprised to rotate and watches how they are trying to restrain a giant creature. After these words, she decides not to waste time and join her soldiers. Being in a battle rack, she raises the sword and again causes a burning flame. She decides to draw her first blow on the head of Golem, leaving a large hole in it, through which the light of the spiritual nucleus clearly emerges. Selena directs all her strength, striking the nucleus with an accurate blow. However, nothing happens. She notes that the nucleus of the golem is extremely strong. After that, he informs all his comrades. The core is the ore contained in the head of the golem. At that moment, Gol waves his hand, scattering the guards around him like small toys, before they have time to resist his strength. Selena, with anxiety, is watching subordinates, who are trying to protect them at the cost of their lives. However, the guards again instill a weapon on the golem, stubbornly not wanting to retreat. One of the fallen guards lying at the legs of Alex raises his hand and points his finger to the passage in the wall. Julia states that they need to escape immediately from here, while Alicia turns to her mentor and insists on urgent retreat. However, Alex does not noticeably want to leave the guards at the same time. Thinking for a moment, he makes a decision. Falling on one knee next to the fallen guard, Alex appeals to him and his companions with a proposal to become his followers. Hearing these words, Church heard him carefully. Meanwhile, while the rest of the guards were fighting the golem, at least 4 of the same creatures have joined him. Together, they ruthlessly destroy the guards, hammering them just in the floor. But suddenly something happened. Galilem did not even have time to understand what happened, as the next moment his entire left hand was completely cut off by one and only movement. Looking forward, he notices a new group of guards. Their armor and weapons have remained the same as their predecessors, and now an alarming unknown aura is raging around them. Therefore, the guards resumed the attack, and now every impact was carried by a real destructive force. In a matter of moments they crushed parts of the bodies of the golem. Watching her subordinates bravely defends her commander and the owner, Selena decides to help them by joining the battle. She again takes the sword and turns to his subordinates, praising them for his excellent work and reporting that he will now be with them side by side. Alicia also joins the battle. She decisively and quickly attacked the golem with selenium and guards. While some worked on the battlefield, several other guards decided to protect Alec and Julia, having settled behind the backs of his comrades. The guards stood in front, protecting them with one hand. Finally, when it took enough time, the battle ended with a clear victory for Mr. Alex's team. Subsequently, all four gathered together and looked at the field, where only traces of recent battle remained. Only Selena did not hide a joyful smile. She seems to have been pleased with what happened. A huge pile of stones stood in front of them, all that remained from the broken bodies of the golem. The battle really turned this hall into a solid chaos. All the guards left after the battle stood side by side, and almost simultaneously dropped on one knee, bowing their heads in front of their owner. Alakiv becomes awkward. He begins to wave his hands, calling for the guards to get out of his knees. However, in response, he hears only how one of them apologizes on behalf of all. The faces of the guards remain invisible, but tears of pity are harassed from their helmets. They sincerely apologize to their expensive ruler. Everyone bows heads and try to wipe tears, and some of them quietly soothe brothers. Julius, Alicia, and Selena are silently watching this scene. However, Selena cannot stay away from the suffering of his subordinates. Sumi is reflected on her face, as if she are about to cry. She confesses to the voice with a shaking voice that she does not understand anything. She confesses that she was not able to protect those she loved. After that, the girl appeals to Mr. Alec and asks for permission to bury the inhabitants of the island with proper respect. Alec does not deny and agrees. Hearing this, the knights feel a real uplift. From their eyes, tears are sharpened again. This time not from sadness, but from joy. They say with deep gratitude that they sincerely thank their lord for such mercy. Selena notes that the golem cannot be turned into servants. Alec considers it annoying because such creatures could come in handy. He takes one of the nuclei and decides to try. Alex sat on Galem's left shoulder, putting his hand on his stone head. Alex glowed in the eyes of Alex, and a smile played on his face. He happily reported that the Galem stone Galem still agreed to serve the prince. 3 young girls were pleased to talk. That was to expect from their teacher. Since then, the guards began to serve a young prince who called them a Steel Legion and gave everyone a new name. However, unfortunately, they did not remember the moment when they were ordered to destroy all living things. However, with the Iron Legion of the island, really nothing threatens. The young prince, lifting his finger, ordered his guards to guard the mines and assist in the extraction of charming ore. A dark-haired girl with a warm smile and a glowing with a grip, seeing a huge mountain of gems, stated that it was incredible. They found 4 varieties of magical ore. Mithril contains magic and stronger than iron. Orichalca is a versatile material that is best for creating weapons. Adamantitis is extremely strong and contains a huge amount of magical energy. Kane's hero is very reminiscent of this ore. He is the same durable and strong. In the cave, a young girl informed Alex that in these places there are extremely large deposits of mithril. And if you dig all day, then the material is enough, at the most, by one than. The prince was surprised that the production would give only so much raw materials, and noted that there would be enough work for a few weeks at least, just to work out the cost of food. The girl thoughtfully turned to the prince and noted that she has another option. She can call for the help of her friends from all over the country. She explained that when the workers get more, the case will move much faster. The prince supported the idea. The guards soon appeared, saying that they were ready to help. They were thanked, and they immediately took up the case. The prince stood away. Sparks were glowing in his eyes, and a gentle smile played on his face. The work raged. Everyone was busy, from the smallest animals to huge stone creatures. The young prince with a smile noted that people became much more, and added that he still traveled only with Alicia, remembering how they had jumped on a charming horse. The blonde, tapping with the selection of the ground, called Mr. Alex, putting her hand on his forehead. The young prince, smiling, asked if she remembered the old days. The girl also smiled and replied that of course she remembered. Alex was genuinely interested in how life was in the place in line, and suspected that he may also be difficult to find common ground with others. Sometimes he even wondered whether to visit her. At the same time, he assured that he was fine. The blonde, with a smile and kindness in her eyes, thanked everyone for their work and devotion. She decided to make them a small offer. A sweet girl with a little scattered braids wondered if they were really allowed to take it and then thanked it. The girl carried a bag of money and, smiling, assured that she could now buy new clothes for children. A young prince with a smile and a half-stuck eye reported that he had brought a provision for the monastery, and suggested that he be sure to divide everything with each other. Behind him stood a cart, upside down with numerous drawers. A girl with long pigtails, with a slight surprise and shyness, wondered if they were really allowed to pick up everything. She noted that few would dare to eat a dish made by a person with a seal of darkness. Alex, without expressing any emotions, noted that the capital remained the same as before. Only the best materials are chosen for the city temple. You will not find any flaws here. Instead, in the ordinary building, everything has been declined and has long been in need of thorough repairs. A young man with a gentle smile and kindness in his eyes promised to help them. A little girl with ponytails, a little frightened, but with a sincere smile, tightly asked if it was true, and then thanked him. When he was called, Alex looked at the girl's outstretched hand in surprise. She said that recently people came to the temple, asked about him, and suggested that they were probably looking for him. The blonde, with a slight fear and alertness, wondered whether they were again those people from the church who were taking away another lives. Alex, a little bit, confidently replied that he did not consider it probable. Alex could only apologize to Lena, and he was interrupted by a girl with a little squat. She assured that he would not worry, because she would tell everyone that she had not seen him for a long time. A little girl with a little stitched pigtails was timidly warned that he was careful. Alex smiled gently with her, and kindly, with her eyes closed, nodded. The young prince thought that Librian should warn, as well as tell everyone the Cyclops that they are hunting for those who take away other people's lives. Suddenly, a loud, powerful jump came from the church. He decided that it should be entered through the reverse. The dark-haired girl, frightened and tears, which were about to break down, quietly reported that Mr. Alec was now in the workshop. Surprised, a blonde girl wondered if the church really got here. Alex, with angry and at the same time concerned expression, exclaimed that this could not be. They entered the room and saw a girl who communicated with her husband. Alex, stunned and a little frightened, wondered whether it is really Iris and what she is doing here. Alex, with a confused gaze, stared at the stranger, and suddenly remembered that she was in the Adventurers Guild, trying to understand whether she was thinking correctly. She noted that the stranger was extremely similar to Iris. The prince, meanwhile, thought who this girl was. Alex continued to think why she decided to turn to him. Suddenly, a stranger appeared near Irisa. She noted that she was aware of his skills, and stretching his horn, asked to expel the sword from him. The man, holding his breath, exclaimed with the surprise that before him, the horn of the black dragon, not looking at the amazing find. Meanwhile, the blonde thought, is she really so strong that she was able to defeat a black dragon? The young prince noted that it is difficult for him to believe in her ability to defeat demons. Alex came to the conclusion that there is a secret in all this. The blonde looked at Alex in surprise and, calling him, wondered where he was in a hurry. Alex, completely confused and puzzled, decided that a stranger, who may know him personally, before him. The stranger, who, according to Alex, resembled Iris, gave the man a bag with coins, and at the same time noted that it was a fee. The man heard and seemed completely puzzled, causing him unexpected shock and misunderstanding. The man exclaimed that usually the sword is not more than 1 gold coin. Instead, the stranger replied that she had as many as 100 gold, and many people told her. She asked to eroke the sword better and to do it as soon as possible, because she needs it to carry out her own design. Alex wondered what the plan was and suggested that she probably seeks to deprive the life of an extremely powerful demon. Hearing this, the man, not hiding his surprise, said it was too much. A girl with dark hair, attracting attention and smiling gently, reported that she was the main carpet of Julius. She promised to complete her work as soon as possible, adding that it would take about an hour. When a stranger slipped a bag of money, The black girl already wanted to turn to him, but he interrupted her, asking for permission to ask a question. Then the stranger wondered whether their master, His Highness, was Alec. The unknown, with an unmoved face, looked carefully at the lost dark-haired girl, who also did not hide her astonishment. The girl replied that the gentleman went to the capital a few days ago. On this stranger, only the verse noted that she understood. The Blondan name said that many people praised him in the city, claiming that he had saved the city, and that without his help, it would be doomed to death. Meanwhile, a black girl looked at a stranger with misunderstanding. The unknown woman continued her long story, suddenly asking if this damn prince really saved the city. Meanwhile, a young prince, accompanied by a fair-haired girl, appeared behind her back. A girl with blonde hair and face, full of anger, began to speak, even a little raising her voice, with indignation, remembering a damn prince. At the same time, Alex remained calm, and without removing the smile of a smile, noted that she really had such a bad opinion about him. The dark-haired girl who stood before the stranger lowered her gaze and, smiling timidly, began to scratch the nape of the nape. Meanwhile, the blonde stranger was in a hurry to apologize, noting that she probably did not have to talk about royal person. The stranger continued her story, urging them to pass on the money of His Highness Alec to apologize. The dark-haired girl, a little shy, turned to a stranger, wanting to find out her name. The foreigner, without showing any emotions, asked a dark-haired woman why she know her name. The dark-haired girl began to explain in confusion that she was conducting the survey, and given the generosity of the amount received, she just wanted to find out the name of her philanthropist. The stranger replied that her name is Lily, and she was born in a city near the western border. She also added that she was the daughter of a merchant. Meanwhile, Alex stopped in full surprise and confusion. The young prince realized that she is undoubtedly lying, and in fact is the daughter of the genus Illyria, the daughter of the head of the family himself, a humble and talented girl named Iris. After that, Alexei continued his monologue, saying that he had already decided on his life after the rebirth. He also mentioned what he really was looking for, and added that she also seeks to change her own destiny. Alex did not leave the thought of why she hunts for demons and why he knew so little about her. Suddenly, the blonde girl screamed suddenly, somewhat confusedly called Alec. She was immediately asked what had happened. Alicia was angry so much that she did not restrain the cry, stating that the prince still spread various dirty gossip, and emphasizing that there is no truth in all this. The young prince was somewhat lost, hearing her words. The dark-haired girl turned to a young prince, asking if he really knew this girl, and at the same time looked at him with a screamed care. The young prince smiled widely and assured that everything was not so. He saw her only once in a guild. Alex thoughtfully scratched the temple, and noted that she also uses a fictional name, introducing Lily. He suggested that he probably did not want anyone to recognize her. The young guy decided that it would be better for her if she didn't know about it. Alex looked at Pegasus and thought that, despite all the rumors, he did not expect her to care for himself. And even now, when the two were already flying on Pegasus, he only hoped that she would be able to make her journey. The man turned to Julia, interested in noting that she seems to be very busy. The girl looked at him anxiously, and, remembering her affairs, threw on the move that it was true, and she needs to hurry. The dark-haired girl suddenly hurried to leave. The blonde and the young prince looked at her in surprise. Alicia noted that it seemed to be very concerned. The men stopped near Alicia and Alex, noting that due to the good reputation of their store, the number of orders increased. The dark-haired girl, meanwhile, sat down at her table. She looked at them, holding a pad in her hands, and noticed that it would take a long time to melt mithril, but with the help of magic this process would go much faster. The young prince, thoughtfully touching his chin, expressed confidence that with charming ore it really should work. The young prince approached a girl with dark hair and wondered if she wanted to learn magic. Julius looked at Alex with admiration and surprise, trying to understand what was being talked about. Alex assured that he could teach her magic, and Julius again asked if it was true. A girl with dark hair with delight and joy asked him to teach her magic. The rest of the workers supported her with a smile, encouraging and assuring that they would take all the work. In the end, they reached the training ground, which stood numerous targets. Alex made a step forward and noted that the chain darkness is a magic that combines darkness and lightning. And if you own the seal of this element, mastering the magic will not be difficult. The dark-haired girl stretched her hands forward, and the young prince helped her, gently directing them to the right position. Alex advised to concentrate on the money surrounding the estate, and to imagine that she was gathering it in her palms. The girl nodded the girl, making it clear that she understood everything. Julius tried to master the art of magic. He lifted one hand up, the other flexed at the level of the chest, slightly pulled it back, and then both hands. The girl repeatedly repeated all the movements, but unfortunately, no results produced. The dark-haired girl was nervous and disappointed that she did nothing, and apologized to Mr. Alec for not feeling anything. Alicia supported Julius with a smile, assuring that she will certainly work, because she is particularly sensitive. The dark-haired girl, with a barely tangible annoyance, exclaimed that Alicia should stop and that she would probably be more happy with axe than magic. Alex, smiling, tried to reassure his girlfriend, assuring that she was not worried. Everything he needs is a little practice. The blonde asked Julia to focus, but her girlfriend assured her that she would definitely work. Julia, a little annoyed, shouted to them to stop making fun of her. Alex smiled, noticing a small magical light that she did not notice between Julia's shaped hands, which she herself did not notice. Because it was at that moment that she loudly reproached Selena and demanded that she did not laugh at her. Suddenly, a powerful whirlwind came out of a small magical glow. Seeing this, Alex noted that it is probably worth establishing protection, say, a barrier of darkness just in case. The guy began to explain that lightning magic is extremely powerful, even with the minimal cost of mana, adding that it should be imagined as if the lightning is striking. At first, the girl had to feel Manu in her own hands. Realizing this, she began to follow the prince's instructions. A wooden target appeared in front of her. Julius was surprised that she managed to achieve the result. Alex, with a smile and passion, assured that thanks to the training he would be able to master other skills. Alex added that they can now go to practice by inviting her to try to direct her magic into magic ore. Julius, smiling gently, supported the decision of the young prince. A black girl sat in front of the stove in which the magic ore was melted. Julio managed to accelerate this process, and he heard a pleasant surprise about the speed of his work. Alex smiled and informed the dark-haired girl that everything was much easier with magic. Julia's face shone admiration. She finally managed to achieve the result. She noted that she could now pour the resulting form, and then they will get the ingots of the mithril. Two girls held a ready-made ingot for the first time in their lives, looking at such a pure mithril. They could not look away from surprise and admiration. Julia gladly listened to their impressions. In her eyes a spark was played, and a slight pride for herself was born in her soul. The dark-haired girl gladly exclaimed to the boys that it is now possible to produce even more ingots than before. Alex sincerely advised for a young girl. Everyone came to work, and over time the amount of ingots increased significantly. For a while, a huge pyramid of ingots grew on the table. Julia lay on the floor, exhausted. The excited Alexei asked the girl if she was fine with her. Julia replied that she seemed a little fascinated. Then Alex suggested that Julia try to do it again, stretching her a glass of water. The prince, smiling, suggested that she sing something quietly. A dark-haired girl, sure it is only water, without any suspicion, raised a glass to her mouth and began to drink. Julia was surprised that her glass was filled again. She said in surprise that she was full again. It was then that Alexa explained the dark-haired girl that this thing is called an endless source. If you fill the artifact with magic, the glass will be filled again with water. Then the prince continued his monologue, explaining that the process of creation is extremely simple. It is enough to fill the magic ore with magic, while imagining the shape of the bowl. This is how water is formed, and the ore retains the properties of the stuffed spell. Hearing the words of the young prince, the black girl thought about everything heard, and then fascinated she expressed the idea. You can add not only water there, but also use the magic of movement. The blonde, easily clapping in the palm of your hand, gladly said it was just a brilliant idea. Her girlfriend, smiling, added that then this gentleman would be able to be teleported to the store. Alex noted that he was thinking about it more than once. However, Alex, with regret and sadness on his face, noted that the stock of mithril in them was limited as the volume of the vessel itself. He explained that mithril will not withstand such powerful magic. The capacity of the bowl is only 100 units, while it takes 80 to create water, and as many as 26,570 is used for the jump. However, later Alex acknowledged that the idea was not so bad. He further noted that Julia first should work out, and when she feels confident in her abilities, he would be able to create cups. Julia happily replied that she would make every effort. Alex explained that even simple magic of water creation can take about 10 minutes to secure it in an artifact, and advised Julia to not rush and calmly pour magic. In response, the girl noted that making such an artifact can take more than an hour. Alicia added that Mr. Alec is simply incredible. The dark-haired girl, a little excited, hastily went to work. She began to look for the information you need in different books. For a while, Julius informed Mr. Alec with delight that she had been able to accomplish the task. Subsequently, a cute girl with a smile and sparkles in her eyes, which held a lighter and shone, reported that this artifact could constantly throw out a flame. Julia clearly stunned and surprised such a statement. The blonde, with a barely noticeable smile, informed the gentleman that she also tried this artifact. He was able to store food fresh at any time. At the same time, she kept a stylish suitcase filled with fruits. Julia felt a slight annoyance and could not understand how it became possible. Alex, with a slight smile on his face and slightly clamped with his eyes, tried to reassure the girl, assuring that they had a lot of effort. Suddenly, the dark-haired girl shouted at Alec, demanding that he also paid attention to her. Julia launched a huge network in front of him, and Alec wondered what it was. The dark hatch explained that it was a city, soaked in lightning magic. The blonde noted that it would not be easy for people to use these sites, and if they remove them, the Holfs will be able to catch fish again. Alex agreed with enthusiasm, adding that magic did not work on the gulfs. Alicia thoughtfully noted that harpoon may be even more effective if you throw it in a flock of fish. The result will remain. She added that it could be easier, because industries are able to use ordinary sins. The dark-haired girl exclaimed that she considered her idea successful. Alex tried to reassure her, assuring that her plan made sense, and suggested that she test her circles. Julius thanked the gentleman with tears in his eyes. Alex noted that thanks to her magic they have enough mithril. A dark-haired girl, full of excitement and passion, turned to Mr. Alec, promising to train hard and become the best blacksmith. The dark-haired girl assured that she would create an artifact that everyone will be envied. Both girls supported the opinion of Julius, and Alex noted that he would look forward to the results. The friendly girl turned to Alexei, asking her to give her all his money. The prince replied that she did not need it at all. Then the girl, barely holding back the indignation, asked to give at least a little, because he had as many as 100 gold. She promised to return everything to the last penny. Alex gratefully thought of his wonderful supporters and felt true happiness. At that moment, the young prince was called a sweet girl, urging not to ignore her and listen carefully. On the roof of a tall building sits a fair-haired girl. Her cloak is barely howling the wind, and she looks carefully at the picturesque landscapes of the outskirts of the city. Suddenly, between city buildings was a figure and rapidly moving to Alex, standing on the roof. It turned out to be a brunette with a sword in his hand. The girl screamed loudly and frantically, as if she wanted to release the all-consuming flames of her own soul, that burning blade, which was repeatedly discussed. Alex looked at the flowing flame weapon that flicked in his hand. Involuntarily, a short line emerged, a trap of darkness. The burning sharp blades that flew directly on him were suddenly frozen in the air. The young prince put them in magical spheres, wrapped in chains that reliably held back these fiery blades. The girl was stunned and could not understand how he did it. She opened her eyes wide. She asked if he really was able to stop her burning blade. Alexei, at the same time frightened and tense, only confirmed her guess. The girl smiled ominously and resolutely put the sword forward, noting that he had surprised her. Her smile became even wider, loud sounds were heard, and the residents, interested in surprise, watched this stage. The girl screamed loudly, calling for a hellish fire. A powerful whirlwind broke from heaven, and an unseen darkness reigned over the city. The girl, like the residents of the city, looked up into the sky. It was not just dark, it became truly black. A charming dome suddenly rose above the island, which restrained the devastating power of the angry swindle, preventing it from breaking through. The young prince raised his hand and, with an unmoved, formidable look, locked the whirlpool in a magical ball, shrouded in chains. The magical ball hangs over the island. In her heart, a crazy storm raged. A young prince with a mocking smile noted that she is undoubtedly pleased with her success in learning, but hopes that she does not intend to destroy the entire island. The girl was embarrassed to apologize to him. The girl looked at the sky with surprise, noting that she did not expect that she would be able to repel even such a powerful spell. Alex turned, looked, and calmly explained. The magic of darkness has power against all the elements except the saint. The young prince called to a blonde girl sitting on the roof of a tall building. Feeling his gaze, she looked wary in his direction. Alex pointed to a charming ball, inside which a frenzy of the clutter raged, and asked her to try to shoot her in the sacred light. She nodded as a sign of consent and reached forward. Suddenly, the charming bullet crumbled into small debris, and the chain broke. The whirlwind was released from his shackles. Girls engulfed fear and alertness before what was happening. The young prince looked down. His eyes glowed at least anxiety and tension, while the fragments of a charming ball and the scraps of chains flew on all sides. Giant flames were rising above the island. The girl was extremely impressed, and in surprise asked if the flames had disappeared. Alicia alarmingly and frightenedly noted that sacred magic has without any effort destroyed the wizard's spell. The young prince calmly reached out at the level of the breast, and lifting his gaze, stated that her magic embodied healing and protection, and she was full of absolute opposite of his dark power. The girl firmly pressed his fist to her chest and smiled widely, assuring that it does not matter, because he still remains the strongest. She has proudly added that no demon is able to resist his magic. Suddenly, she thoughtfully took her hand for her chin and talked about the Holy Church. The young prince looked away and noted that all the people of their kind, who intertwine other people's destinies, have a powerful holy magic. Alex turned away and closed his eyes, recognizing that he was not able to change something. The only thing left was to become stronger, to cope with everything that was waiting. The young prince clicked his fingers, and the charming dome, which was preceded by the island before, began to disappear slowly. The sky over the city has cleared again, and the mood of the inhabitants has improved significantly. Alicia smiled widely, noting that at least they had a city that the church was not suspected. The girl looked satisfied, and Alex agreed with her. The young prince suggested that Julia, together with her family, set up stable production of mithril. If they manage to create an artifact capable of withstanding a jump, it will greatly strengthen the protection of their city, and thanks to these artifacts, the supply of goods will take place instantly. Suddenly, a loud cry came from above. The young prince looked around and lifted his gaze, asking what had happened. The girl also brought her eyes up, covering them from the bright light, and noticed that the sound was heard from the guard tower. Alicia pointed towards and called Alex. In the sky above the island, you could see Pegasus and a large flock of crows, which were constantly approaching. Someone asked if they were demonic or crows. In response, the idea came that it is probably not the case. After these birds have been destroyed on the island, they no longer appeared. When the pegs had already flew to the island, they noticed other Pegas with people riding there. It struck them to the depths of their soul. Alex felt anxiety and fear engulfed him, because he had ever seen people on Pegasus. The young prince suddenly turned and with a gesture of his hand ordered everyone to prepare for battle. Alicia looked at him, raising his eyebrows. In her eyes, frank hostility was read. The brunette looked at the shooters and ordered them to be alert. She ordered the Pegasus to go. Suddenly, Alicia exclaimed, calling Selena to stop, and hurried to explain that they were dressed in church robes. The young prince looked at her in surprise, not recognizing in these words and actions of Iris. They stared at a man sitting on a Pegasus. Alicia strictly stated that there could be no doubt. It is really he. Alex turned his gaze forward and slightly raised his eyebrows. One of the girls sitting on Pegasus had an extremely gloomy look, and under her eyes darkened bruises. The other girl smiled gently at first, but in a moment her smile changed to a sinister smile. In her hands she held a couple of sharp daggers and a crossbow with no less sharp arrows. Lisa reached forward and ordered everyone to prepare crossbows, emphasizing that it was necessary to knock down every Pegasus. In response, the archers assured that they understood everything and only waited for the signal. But suddenly, the young prince exclaimed, calling them to stop. Alicia turned to him with an impermeable look, and Alex explained to her that probably these people did not belong to the temple and are now depriving someone of their lives. After that, the young prince ordered them not to open fire. The shooters began to fire crows, and when the birds fell to the ground, they were swollen by the joy of victory. Soon the Pegats went down at the main entrance, where the girls were already waiting for them with a young prince. All three feared and looked closely at the strangers. They were traveling to the girls who just appeared. One of them, smiling, put her palm on his chest and wondered if he was really His Highness Alec, the sixth prince of the empire. The young prince continued to strictly look at them, recognizing that they were right. Alicia, covering her mouth with her palm, whispered to the prince that these girls were extremely strong, holy magicians. Alex did not look at her, only asked to remain silent. His eyebrows felt even more, and he asked why they came here. A cheerful girl said they had been sent to expel the devil from these lands. Meanwhile, the second uninvited guest remained gloomy, not looking at the young prince. Alex asked about the devil in surprise, and Alicia looked at them with disbelief and a slight shade of fatigue. Alex turned away and remembered the girl's girl. The young prince imagined a demonic girl suddenly nickened. Listening to the conversation of two girls about her, Alex looked and looked a little, thinking that he was only a regular demonstration demon and not a devil. Alex was indifferent to the uninvited guest and noted that there was no devil here. The girl only smiled mysteriously and replied that the devils were skillfully lying. The young prince assured everyone that there could be no unclean power here. The second girl plunged her hand under the cloak and pulled out a magic stone, the surface of which was decorated with a mysterious symbol. She announced that in this case they would find it themselves. The girl jumped her eyebrows, and with a threatening look, she stretched her arms forward, and then targeted the stone on a young prince. Alexei was a little frightened by a strange stone, and slightly deflected. Uninvited guests looked at him stunningly, unable to hide their astonishment. Their mouths were revealed by surprise. The girl, frightened, opened her mouth wide, exposing all her fangs, and firmly closed her eyelids. Uninvited guests looked at a young prince in surprise and confusedly. Alex fastened his eyebrows and, frightened, turned his head, raising his hands to his face and slightly opened his lips. After that, the girls looked at. One with surprise asked what happened. The other advised to be alert. In response, a confident voice came. They did everything right. Alicia laughed loudly and malicious, putting his palm on her chest. She screamed that they were not too intelligent and did not harm such junk. The brunettes stretched out their finger at the moment when the uninvited guests stated that they should try again. They again raised that magic stone and exclaimed that the devil appeared to them. The bright light shone from the stone again, and the young prince, shaking, covered his face with his palm and closed his eyes. He asked, dissatisfied, that it was for light and why he saw nothing. Uninvited guests looked at him in surprise. Alicia, dissatisfied, and noted that their behavior was extremely impolite. In addition, she wondered if they sometimes had forgotten that the prince was standing in front of them. Unknown guests were confused and could not find what to answer. After that, the unexpected guest suddenly sank, bowed to a young prince who stood in the middle of the hall, and a little stinging, began to apologize to him. Someone was surprised at which temple was raised by such impolite women. Alicia looked at them with condemnation, noting that their situation did not justify such behavior. After that, she wondered loudly why they had all waved this stone here. Uninvited guests with some insecurity said they heard, "The devil himself lives in this place." The young prince fell and looked at them sternly, saying that he had already bored. He wondered whether they are those who take away life from others. The uninvited guests looked at Alex with a slight surprise and misunderstanding. The young prince wondered if they did not appear to deprive him of his life. One of the unspoken guests with anger looked at the young prince, put her palm on his chest, and denied loudly. It was not true. They came here to destroy the devil. She assured that thoughts did not have to deprive the life of the seal of darkness. She then stated loudly that they were exorcists. She already wanted to add something else, but the second girl scolded and called her, intentionally interrupting, so that she did not say unnecessary. The young prince thoughtfully rubbed his chin, thinking that before him there are real exorcists. The girl demon felt a real fear and a lot of tension. She firmly pressed her hands to her breasts, still not dare to open her eyes. The young prince looked at them calmly and attacked his palm to his chest. He assured that he was not a demon. The uninvited guests were looked at, not in the faith of his words. One of the girls twisted her lips and noticed that the bodies of people with a seal of darkness always take the demons. The young prince felt a slight fear and looked at unexpected guests with misunderstanding. They bowed their heads, standing just in front of him. The girl assured that with the stone everything was fine, there could be no mistakes, and added that he was the devil himself. The young prince felt a slight fear that mixed with alarming tension. The uninvited guests took their hands. The girl with black eyes called her Neat, and the other briefly reported that her name is Tika. They took their hands firmly, agreeing that it was time to start. The young prince was alert, his eyebrows shake slightly, and his fists squeezed. Alicia and Brunette also tensed as soon as the guests said they could not return with empty hands. The gloomy girl strictly turned to a young prince, asking not to keep their evil on them. The second was just in response. Alicia, along with the brunette, standing next to the prince, immediately grabbed the swords and target them on strangers. The girl explained coldly. They have an order, and they have to fulfill it to the end. They raised their hands, on the wrists of which the bracelets glittered, and struck a spell that had to call the saint. Suddenly, there was a glow, and a divine creature appeared next to those present. The unexpected guests asked her to share their strength. The girls stretched their hands to the divine creature, widely opening their mouths with surprise. The young prince sat down with fear, without drawing his eyes. Suddenly, Alicia, along with the brunette, rushed to the uninvited guests, who immediately felt anxiety and alertness. The young prince slid his eyebrows and stretched his hand to the side, loudly demanding that the girls stop immediately. The gloomy girl just waved her eyebrows and noted that divine creatures only attack demons. The young prince looked at them annoyedly, mentally noting that the call of the saint was a spell that is the complete opposite of the magic of the challenge of the demon. This creature will continue to attack until the demon is destroyed. However, if there is no demon nearby, it will remain inactive. The Kravchina was suddenly nurtured and asked for another girl if they had made mistakes, because he had never been called before. The second uninvited guest had fallen, and strictly replied that the angelic eyes could not be deceived. The divine creature opened her eyes and suddenly turned into a terrible, incomprehensible figure with 3 eyes and 2 swords in her hands. And instead of his tongue, 2 more arms appeared, each 4 fingers. The silent girl exclaimed that the angel attacked it, and the other immediately stated that it only proves, before them, and indeed the devil. The young prince, having opened the surprise of his mouth, watched the devil with horror, and Alicia, along with the brunette, was wary and angry watched the events. The divine creature aimed at them its great, sharp sword and immediately began the attack. From the blade, bright magical energy struck, and the air pierced a loud sound. The brunette clapped her teeth and extended her hands forward, forming a magical shield. The young prince reached for her with a frightened look, but at the same moment Alicia grabbed him. He looked at his hand in surprise, not understanding why dark magic woke up. After that, the heavenly creature crossed her hands on the chest, preparing to strike a new blow. Alicia covered a young prince and warned loudly that she was attacking again. Alex looked at her, not knowing how to proceed. The young prince looked and thought that he probably felt the presence of a demon. The girl demon, with scared eyes and a noticeable excitement, asked why he attacked. Because in fact she is a man. The prince suggested that if you can send it, it may be possible to negotiate. And the demonic girl only quietly admitted that she is very scared. The young prince looked at the divine creature and realized that it should be overcome. However, he had no idea how to do it. The prince thought that the appearance of the angel was extremely rare, and there was no descriptions of how to win it. The pavement was obviously not easy. She clenched her teeth and growled low, involuntarily closing one eye. The young prince has fallen, convinced that his holy aura is suppressing the magic of others, and therefore homuncles are unlikely to be useful. He raised his hand up and called Selene. The young prince summoned the fiery barrier in the imagination, deciding to prevent his comrades' harm. A magical dome was risen above them, and at the same moment, a divine creature flew on them. The magic barrier flew into small fragments that flew. The young prince was impressed, and the brunette, a little tired and alarmed, sat on the floor and watched carefully at everything. The fragments of the barrier fell on the ground. The young prince turned his gaze to the divine creature, raising his eyebrows. He reasoned how she was able to destroy the protection with only one blow. Alex wondered if there was a border of that power at all. Alicia decided that her magic was also powerless and worriedly addressed the young prince. Meanwhile, Alex has created this charming barrier field again. Alicia exclaimed to take advantage of the jump and took selenium from here. However, the young prince denied. Nothing will help, because the divine creature will not allow him to use the magic of darkness. The brunette sharply became ill, leaning and clenching her teeth. The young prince looked at her side with anxiety, trying to evaluate the situation and to think about what could help her. Selena clasped her teeth and lifted her head, calling Alicia and Mr. Alec. Alicia assured her with sincere anxiety that they would not leave her. The young prince, though he believed that he did not have time to do anything in his past life, now, for his friends, he collected all his strength. Alex's hand trembled noticeably. Suddenly, an angel had a few more pairs of hands. Now there were 8, and everyone has sword. Selena noted that she had 2 hands with an angel, and this is impossible. But the angel immediately rushed forward and rapidly attacked them, while struck by all his swords. The fragments flew in different directions, and the air was immediately filled with thick smoke. Nate and Tika shouted loudly that the devil was defeated. But suddenly someone's haze stretched out of a dense hand that tried to get to them. At the same moment, small magic barriers were sown in the air. The young prince threw a sinister, harsh glance at the uninvited guests, and dark magic struck on his hand from his hand. It was these magical barriers that saved the people present from the impact of a divine being. Selena and Alicia were stunned for everything that was happening. Alex barely noticeably erected his eyebrows and thought that if he was even more compressed with dark energy, his barrier from the darkness would be able to withstand the strokes of this divine creature. And perhaps now, they would succeed. The young prince corrupted loudly that he would take guard, and then appealed to Selena, asking her to focus on witchcraft. Selena straightened, lifted her sword in front of her, and began magic, calling for a flame, capable of burning the soul itself. In a moment, she shouted loudly, "Dragon flames!" Sharply shooting the sword forward, she broke through the shield, and the fiery flow rolled simply to the divine creature. Unknown guests looked at it with fear, outlining their mouths with surprise and horror. The powerful flames swept the whole body of the angel. Nate and Tika were bent, shaking their hands. The angel flashed with bright fire, and feathers were showered in some places. The young prince, with hope and anxiety, asked if they succeeded. Uninvited guests, stunned, did not look away from the angel. Their eyes were staring, and their mouths were stunned by surprise. The body of the angel literally broke into pieces, and only the eye that glowed on his stomach remained wide open. Alicia corrupted loudly that the nucleus of the angel remained unharmed, so soon he would be able to recover. Selena added with mild anxiety that due to sacred magic of serious injuries. Selena suggested using Inferno. Alicia decisively refused, assuring that they would destroy the whole island. The young prince seemed to not pay attention to this dispute. A gentle smile played on his face, and thoughts were completely busy with a demon girl. The demonic girl noted that they were in an extremely difficult situation. After that, she smiled ominously, adding that even her was obvious. Suddenly, Alex reached out and confidently, with a smile, asked Selenium to use the dragon flame, and Alicia to weaken the enemy's protection. Selena laid the sword lively and caused the dragon's flames, and in the meantime, Alicia began to destroy his defense. Suddenly, a wooden arrow was hung in their side. She slid through the hair of Selenium and stuck just in the face of Alicia. Alicia froze with horror, without taking a look from the edge, while Selena turned sharply to the direction from where the arrow arrived. Tico stood with the crossbar, holding the arrows in her hands. With a rigid, almost ominous expression, she warned that they would not allow them to do the plan. Nate and Tico, armed with wedge weapons, were ready to have at any moment to attack. Unknown guests looked at them ominously and unfriendly, and Nate noted that the demons were the main enemies of the church. Suddenly, the exclamations were sounded. Someone stated that it was also ready to stand on the side of their owner, Alex. On all sides, archers appeared, ready with pulling meadows, and the armored guards rushed forward, becoming a live shield for Alex, Alicia, and Selena. They were determined to protect their wards from enemies. Uninvited guests were only surprised and helplessly looked at them. Nada and Tika surrounded the knights, so they pressed each other, looking around, watching the danger from different sides. Tika urged them not to interfere, but Nate exclaimed that they only came to put an end to the devil's life. And all this is for the sake of saving the unhappy guy. Alex watched them with surprise. Unproven guests watched everything that happened, almost without interest. Then, Tika called Nate and assured her that she understood everything. Together, they raised their hands, on the wrists of which magic bracelets shone. Young Prince, Alicia and Selena were watched by all with intense fear and alert in the eyes. Hardly showing his eyebrows and slightly spreading his mouths, they froze. The heart of a divine creature began to shine brighter and brighter. The wreckage flew in different directions, and the light became brighter. Alicia, with anxiety, called Selenium, with a strong flame. Nate rushed to a young prince rapidly. She seemed extremely aggressive. She was already measured to attack him with her daggers. Alex, in a confusion of his mouth with fear, had no idea how to proceed. Alice shouted, ordering the guards to grab them. On all sides, round shells were shown in the air. At the same time, they were struck by bolts from the crossbow. The guards slipped on scattered shells. Nate opened her eyes, and it turned out that her iris was dark and the pupil, on the contrary, white. She asked him not to take it too personally. The young prince looked at her with fright, opening his eyes wide. Suddenly, without any warning, Nate rushed to the attack on a young prince and jumped sharply. She looked at Alex without any emotions while he released a silent cry. Alex squeezed his fingers with a protective barrier on which deep scratches were already visible. Nate stood on the shield, causing one blow after another. Suddenly, the divine creature recovered, and Alex, hearing someone's difficult breathing, looked at Nate in surprise. Her hand started the ward. Nate suddenly felt as he was covered by the heat without understanding what was happening. Throwing his daggers, he saw that the flame had already thrown into clothes. Alicia looked in surprise at Selena, fell and denied loudly that she was not her. The young prince, confusing his mouth, watched the events with surprise. In his thoughts, he thought whose thing could be the case. Perhaps the angel himself. Tika called loudly and anxiously to her. Nate began to spin around and chose that she was not a demon. The young prince, concerning his eyebrows, exclaimed that the sacred flame should not harm the person and immediately ordered to retreat. The uninvited guest continued the ward and did not get tired of claiming that it was not a demonstration. She lowered her head, confessing that she did not use dark magic. The young prince created a protective barrier of darkness, enveloping himself and an uninvited guest. She grabbed her head and repeated everything that not the devil. Alex cast a look at the girl, which combined annoyance and anxiety. His eyes suddenly expanded when he suddenly paid attention to the arm of uninvited guests. Seeing a flame flared on the girl's glove, he noticed a seal of darkness. The young prince approached the uninvited guest, without taking a surprised look from the seal on her hand. In his opinion, the question was whether there were still people who wear a sign of darkness among those present in the church. The young prince remembered people from the monastery, and suggested that they were also talking about it. Alex, looking at the girl who was tormented by the pain, wondered if they became exorcists contrary to their own will. Another girl with a crossbow looked at Nate with a slight sadness and disappointment, thinking about something of her own. Alicia supported Selena by her shoulder, helping her to get up, and asked if she could and again use the dragon flame. Selena answered in the affirmative. Alicia with Nisishko slipped past a girl with a crossbar, and she did not even pay attention to her. Suddenly, the crossbow crumbled into pieces, and the magic bracelet on her wrists crawled and flew off small debris. An unusual guest looked at the broken crossbow maliciously and dissatisfied. Suddenly the second girl turned to her loudly, returning to her direction, and the young prince, meanwhile, stared at her with an empty look, as if a delusion into her own thoughts. Alicia jumped her eyebrows and strictly said that she would not allow them to target Mr. Alec. Alicia undoubtedly swung his sword on a young girl and broke her blades. The magical bracelet on her hand suddenly crumbled into small debris. Alicia noted that now they would no longer be able to use the angel, after which she turned to a young prince. The prince smiled widely and noted that it was a good job. Alice appeared to the divine being, stating that it should be completed. The young prince, tired and a little puzzled, cast a tired look at Ellis, and his mouth remained semi-open. The young prince met with a look with Alicia. The girl was preparing for the offensive, creating a magical ball, while the prince, firmly clenching his fists, was ready for battle with the angel. They stood just in front of a divine creature that rose high in the air. The young prince felt that the magic of this creature far exceeds his own. Alex stared at the angel carefully, thinking that even such a creature should have a vulnerable place. It was the case. If destroyed, the angel will disappear. Alicia glanced at a young prince who did not look out of the angel, and reported that all the preparations were completed. Suddenly, strange sounds came, and uninvited guests suddenly rushed to Alicia and the young prince. Alicia reacted instantly. She rushed to the girl, knocked her to the ground and shouted loudly that she would not allow them to do so. Another uninvited guest was going to attack a young prince. He pulled the slingshot, preparing to shoot stones. The prince, frightened to the heart, opened his eyes wide and stared at the girl. Suddenly, a flame wall broke out suddenly before everyone. All the shells, released from the slingshot, crashed into this magical obstacle and did not get the goal. The uninvited guest was confused by the unsuccessful attempt of the attack and the sudden, unexpected obstacle. Selena hid in the magical dome, clenching her teeth from tension. She turned to a young prince and warned that she could not stand for a long time. Alex turned and seriously assured that he understood her. Alex closed his eyes and scattered, remembering that he planned to convey the magic of Alicia's magic. But now, it seems, there was no choice. The young prince reached away and caused a sacred glow. A magical, bright light bullet was hanging over his palm. Alex watched the ball closely, which rapidly increased directly in his eyes. Unknown guests were tired of watching what was happening. Tika wondered if it was a magic holy, but Nietzsche noted that the holy magic did not aim to give an angel a lesson, so there's nothing to worry about. The charming ball has already grown to the giant size and touched the angel himself. From her jets is an extremely bright world. Suddenly, a strange sound was heard from the ball. The angel was frozen in place, and the young prince put 2 fingers to his mouth and commanded, "Browse!" Suddenly, a strange loud sound came from, and something suddenly cracked. Alicia and Selene were monitored by the events with fatigue and some misunderstanding. The bright outer shell of the magical ball cracked, flying on the fragments on all sides, and inside a bullet of dark magic, wrapped in chains. The angel dropped away. The chains made a strange crackling sound and crackled. The ball flashed the flames, and the divine creature shone with bright light, so that only its silhouette could be distinguished through the dazzling shell. Suddenly, a powerful flame broke out. It raged with such force that the island itself was overwhelmed by the size. The young prince barely bent his fingers, and the divine creature suddenly began to break into parts, and numerous large cracks appeared on the magical ball. The young prince clenched his palm into his fist. The darkness of the darkness rose, and he stated that it was this power that could change the fate. The magic ball suddenly broke up with a loud explosion, and its wreckage flew all directions. Alex was satisfied, even smiling quietly, then grabbed his wrist. Dark energy began to emerge from the seal of darkness, and the young prince was convinced that his black magic would not yield to the power of the angel. The girl watched everything, stunningly frozen, and later her mouth stretched in a predatory smile. She wondered who he is if he was able to possess dark magic and holy power at the same time. The young prince thoughtfully muttered in response. Alex closed his eyes, and slightly bowing his head, calmly said that he was just a man. Suddenly, Alicia and Selena shouted his name loudly. The young prince hugged firmly, and joyful smiles blossomed on their faces. Alex felt something tight and uncomfortable with such closeness. Alicia noted that their lord had exceeded all the hopes. Selena noticed how the young prince had overcome the angel with only 1 blow. Alex is a little newest, not finding words. In the meantime, the invaders were already restrained by the guards, and the dissatisfaction of those was quite obvious. Tika, a little tired and disappointed, asked if the angel really lost the devil. Nate also looked upset and frightened, uncertainly assuring that this could not happen. They looked at the fragments of their broken, charming bracelets that were scattered on the ground, and did not know what to do next. Alexei turned to uninvited guests, and in his gaze, anger broke out. Now they had to be responsible for everything. Alex looked at the unexpected guests strictly, raised his eyebrows, and stated that his decision would depend on their answers. Alicia, together with Selenium, also did not take out the girls of vigilant, cold looks. Unprocessed guests felt fear and tension when Alicia slowly reached for the sleeve of their sword. One of the girls returned to the young prince and noted that he first wanted to make sure that he was, sometimes, the devil. Alex was a little surprised, but calmly replied that it was not at all, and they were wrong. However, in his thoughts, he noted that despite this, it was the angel who attacked him. The young prince suggested that the divine creature could respond to his seal of darkness. However, the girls confidently denied that it was impossible, because they have repeatedly turned to him. The girls raised their hands up. Nate quickly removed the glove, and everyone showed their palms, on every dark, its own seal of darkness. Alex watched the uninvited guests carefully. The young prince was surprised to realize that they also had the same signs. Selena wondered if the owner of the darkness could belong to church circles. Alicia, covering her mouth with her hand, looked at Selena and explained that in fact the exorcists were a separate organization. The young prince attentively, with a slight surprise, listened to the girls when they expressed confidence that he possessed the magic of darkness, which only the forces of evil can master. Tika was worried about how he managed to keep his mind in such darkness. The girl confidently stated that anyone who turned into a demon inevitably crazy. The young prince remembered himself badly in his past life. Alicia at the same moment stood in front of him, protecting the prince and holding her hand on the head near the side. Alicia stated that it did not matter what it was, because its master Alec was for her. Alec looked at her with surprise. Alicia's gaze at that moment became terribly tense when she added that if someone had tried to take it from her, she would never forgive it. Alex looked at the girls with regret, feeling that in this country the principles have long been firmly rooted. Darkness here is considered a true evil. He did not leave the question of what happened to them in the monastery. Tika lowered her head and said quietly that they should put an end to the devil, because then Miari was crying. Alex calmly, but with a noticeable interest, he asked the girls who were Miari. They looked wary of the young prince, and in their eyes flashed a shade of sadness. They remembered how one woman strictly ordered them to hide the seals so that no one would see them. The frightened girls always humbly agreed, and the woman annoyedly emphasized that it should be remembered and not falling into the eyes. Young girls always accompanied this woman and helped her. Local residents, hostile, have repeatedly mocked them. When a woman looked after the girls, she emphasized that they should now understand how dangerous it is. When the girls grew up, this woman continued to assure them that many locals treat them with hatred through the seal, so they should be careful. The girls joked that Miari was extremely harsh, but at the same time, very good, and laughed together. Despite the harshness of Miari, the girls had fun with her. For example, when they returned home with shopping, their sincere laughter was heard in the house. Miari also had a seal of darkness, and explained to the girls that, when they became the bellies, they would stop being afraid of the power and having constant abundance. Miari threw the apple up and reported that they provided personal mentors in magic, and most importantly, to master the elements. One of the girls noted that she was good to control the fire, and the other, raising the bow, boasted her skills of archers. Nate has fascinated that she would certainly try to become stronger as soon as possible. Miari, with a sincere and gentle smile, turned to Tika, encouraging her to try it. The girl took off his glove and wondered what she could do. She looked at her seal with a barely noticeable smile of disappointment, thinking that she could not be read. When Maria passed with the girls past a man who suffered from alcoholism, she reminded them that they should always be focused and never resorted to dark magic. Suddenly, a sharp and foul explosion came. One of the girls fell to the ground, and the other, worriedly, rushed to her. Miari looked at a drunkenness, who was uncertain about darkness. The man grabbed the girl firmly for his wrist and asked if she had a darkness. Miari and Nate, full of anxieties and fear, rushed to the Tika when the angry man lifted her by his hand. Nate rushed to help immediately. Miari, with a frightened face, hurried to apologize to her husband for accidentally pushing him, and at the same time she thought that she was probably too much alcohol. Nate, meanwhile, removed the arrow and set it on a stranger, demanding that he immediately release the tack. Miari screamed with despair, demanding that the knight stopped immediately. However, Nate pressed on the descent, missed, and hit the hotel sign that hung behind the back of this giant. The man turned and looked at the sign. Miari shouted loudly to them to be careful. After that, the man looked angry at the girls and then threw his tack just in the arms of Miar. But she had time to pick her up for his waist, involuntarily closing her eyes. A man armed with cold weapons tried to attack Nate. He shouted that they were all dirty and people were not capable of, and saliva splashes were flying from his mouth. At that moment, the blonde girl exclaimed her name, and Alex, with a glance full of threat, reached out to the attacker. The guy had horror in his eyes. The man's head suddenly fell, and a grimace was frozen on his face. A shaded, frightened, as if he shouted and sobbed with fear of what had happened. Two girls, with tears in their eyes, watched all this, and excitedly called the names of each other. From the dark mass in the air, a request was made for the girls to run away. The voice with threatening stuttering confessed that he could not restrain himself. The girls with horror and tears in their eyes were monitored for what was happening. A dark-haired woman, in the eyes of which was easily reading pain and tears, wanted to ask something, and suddenly Tika, grabbing her sword, rushed to her. The blonde girl, screaming, said the name. Then a voice sounded calling for her life. Tika said with sadness, "How? In a knife in the chest of that girl. She saw how she fell and thanked her. The pale girl with the bruising under her eyes now looked at the tyke. She then told that after all they ordered to come here. That is why they are forced to destroy demons for the sake of saving human souls. The young prince listened to their words with anxiety, and the girls were in a hurry to share the impressions of Alex's appearance. In their memory, the question was constantly whether they are correct. The girl raised his voice, claiming that they were forced to work on the temple and threatened to destroy the monastery. The blonde looked at her husband, asking if he really was waiting for their forgiveness. Having said this, Alex thought. The girl turned to a young prince. The girl looked worriedly at the gentleman, assuring him that he was not an evil person, and asked to make a fair decision. Suddenly, the voice of the gentleman himself came. He announced that he had already decided everything. Two young girls were watching and listening to his words. The young prince managed to say this as the girl immediately interrupted him by contacting the owner. She said they were ready to accept any punishment and sought to deprive him of his life. One of the girls spoke. In her eyes she was sorry. The second picked up with tears in her eyes, confessing that they became demons because of this. They both tried not to meet the owner. Suddenly, two girls fell around and assured that they trust their lives. The cross fell out of his hands and crashed, and in memory she was constantly ripping. Very soon these girls will meet me, Ari. Two young girls were kneeling in front of her husband. Alicia cast an annoyed look at uninvited guests, approached them sharply and briefly ordered to prepare. A girl with chestnut hair covered her hands with her hands. Unknown guests closed their eyes firmly and clapped their teeth, anticipating a blow from a blonde girl. The young prince immediately lowered his hand from his face and stood in front of the nuns, closing them. He shouted that Alicia had stopped. The girl just looked at the master, not understanding what was happening. Suddenly, the blondes had an idea and, full of enthusiasm, she stated that first you needed to know more information. Focusing, looking at the blonde girl, wondered who sent them here. Alicia warned, if someone opens the truth, death will come to him even faster. The nuns looked at them absolutely motionless and explained that they could not tell anything. They noted that they have taken an oath to never reveal the face of their patron. Alex was amazed. These women came here ready to sacrifice their lives only for the sake of keeping the name of their employer in secret. Alicia turned to the master and noted that the decision depends only on him. Alex accepted this news in silence. Thinking a little, the prince said that they could not allow the nuns to leave, and therefore only two options remain. At this point, while he spoke, the nun was anxious and eagerly awaited his sentence. Alex, with a serious face, began to explain. The first option is to allow Alicia and their life to go on his turn. The second, to become his followers. The girls were struck by this news, and they were surprised to ask if he really hinted at the treason of the church. The girl with chestnut hair with anxiety turned to a young prince, and Alicia, crying out of fear, assured that it was impossible because they came here to put an end to his life. Alex listened carefully to the nun's response. They could not do it because they just learn about it. All their friends will have to spend the rest of their lives in the monastery. The blonde turned to the prince and agreed with Alice's words. She noted that it was about people who deprive other lives, once appeared in his way, and if they can trust them. Alex seriously stated that signing a contract is not just an oral arrangement, and warned, if they betrayed him at least once, he can take their lives at any moment, because then their days would end. Alex reached out to them, and his view was filled with harshness. Alex continued, noting that it is better to agree to his proposal, because the escape is not a worthy choice. He advised to think that it would be the best for them. The girls looked at the husband suspicious and asked why he was so hard to save them. Alex wondered why there was something strange about this. In response, he was told that he was too good, and then added that their mission was to deprive him of his life. Alex thought about their words, and his mood changed dramatically. A shadow appeared on his face. Alicia, Selenium, and dark-haired girl had fun, and the young prince answered them with a warm smile. In his dreams, he sought to create a world where everyone can find happiness, both the people on which the seal of darkness and demons that help in everyday affairs, and intelligent creatures like golets. Alex stood in front of unexpected guests, Neat and Tika, and stated that he wanted to create a place where everyone would be desirable, a place where people can live happily. The girls listened to his words with a slight surprise and sincere interest. They wondered in surprise whether people with the seal of darkness could find happiness in life. The young prince hesitantly muttered that this applies to their friends from the monastery, if of course the same they want it. Nate looked at the Tane with fatigue. Tika, pressing her hand to her chest and swearing, said that Mary donated her life for them. Nate confirmed with delight that that's all that was, so they have no right to give up their own lives so much. Tika had fallen and noted that they were only worthless servants. Opening her eyes wider, she added that they were sent to put an end to his life. Suddenly they grabbed the hoods, threw them away with a sharp movement and shouted to Alex. The young prince looked at them with surprise. Tika sincerely begged the young prince to conclude an agreement with them. Nate, no less serious, assured that they are both ready to serve him by the end of their days. A friendly smile appeared on the young prince's face, and he confidently agreed to their offer. Stretching their hand, the prince waited for the girls to raise their palms to the forehead, and then easily touched the tips of their fingers. The girls lifted a little above the ground, which was a surprise for them. They barely spread their mouths. The young prince stated that they are his followers from now on. The girls were amazed at such an incredible force that they could not help but ask where she came from. They looked at the seals of darkness that glowed on their palms. Alex was also surprised and thought about it. He began to explain. The young prince said that the Ticks have a young moon seal and specializes in secret. Instead, Nate has a shadow stream seal. It is inferior to the force of the moon, but is extremely useful in hunting and in battle. The girls were interested in looking at their seals. The young prince with a smile assured that they have nothing to worry about, because both of their seals are extremely useful. The girls with surprise and inspiration promised to do their best. Nate noted that Tika had not yet solved her seal. Tika, somewhat involved in these words, tried to answer the same, but Nate added that the young prince considers her useful in battle. The demonic girl expressed that they were amazing smell, and Alex only thought that no one had asked her thoughts. Elysia felt a slight dissatisfaction. Selena, taking herself for her chin, noted that both of them were experienced people who used to deprive other lives. Elysia has given some concern. She confessed that she could not trust them, but at the same time her example testified to the decision of the young prince. She asked her to give her the opportunity to watch them first. The young prince was a little surprised, but decided that Alicia was just worried about him. The young prince assured that he understood her. Alicia cast an annoyed look at the girls and warned loudly. If they do something suspicious, she immediately cuts off their heads. The girls were scared, in a hurry that they understood everything. Nate and Tika assured that they would not let him down. Alicia, however, strictly and even with notes of threats, warned that they would be treated with a young prince with greater respect, promising to teach them well. The girls, barely restraining the excitement, stinging up. The young prince, along with Selena, was watched by this stage with a slight smile. Subsequently, the night came. From a small fountain, streams of water flowed quietly. The young prince, tired and exhausted, sat in the water itself. He wondered that after the battle he had no strength, and sighed. He thought that, according to Tiki, it was an order, to its end. It came from one of the members of the Church of the Saint, and the church itself is located in Buris. Tika also noted that they did not meet personally with the customer, but received a letter with detailed instructions. The young prince remembered the words of Nate. They avoid direct communication with those who wear the seal of darkness. She explained that they were only given a task, to destroy the devil and put an end to the life of the prince. They told a little nervous how they came across a flock of dangerous demons during the flight over Tiaris. When they finally saw a human settlement, they could not keep a smile. Alicia wondered the girls whether this means that there was no evidence of the church involvement in the attempt on the prince's life. The girls confidently confirmed this. The young prince believed that before his revival, his father had ruled in Buris. However, on the day when the uprising broke out, he tried to remove the emperor. Nate, with a light note the amount noted that today, the number of church officials is already approaching 10,000. Alex thoughtfully put his hand on his chin and reflects on this figure. 10,000, which symbolized many divine creatures. Salin smiled and noticed that he was undoubtedly tired. She advised him to visit the bath today, assuring that it helps to get rid of fatigue. So the young prince found himself in a bath, where the air was filled with a thick, hot steam. The young prince lay in the water full of relaxation. Closing his eyes, he felt pleasure and thought it was extremely nice. A sophisticated chandelier hung on the ceiling, near which a couple was climbed. and angels were carved on the walls. The prince noted that the design seemed surprising to him. The young prince looked at the moon that shimmered through the ceiling, and felt how nice to stay alone sometimes. Recalling himself in his past life, he realized that he was once afraid of loneliness. The young prince remembered that he felt lonely all his life. During his studies or training, his efforts seemed futile, and no one even paid attention to him. He was afraid to stay alone forever and dreamed of at least someone noticing him. It was a great concern for the guy, and the anxiety did not leave his heart. Meanwhile, the young prince raised his head and, smiling sincerely, glad. Now everything is well. He has real friends from now on. The young prince mentioned Alicia, Alec, Julia, and the One, as it was embarrassed to stand, covering only a towel, as well as Nate from the TIC, which was also embarrassed. The young prince smiled, remembering the girls and thinking they were with him now. He did not even notice how they went quietly to the bath and stopped his gaze at his look. The young prince seemed to have a real pleasure in his own thoughts. It was strange to him why they were left without everything. Alex opened his eyes a little and saw 4 girls, who, wrapped in towels, hid their bodies shyly. The young prince, embarrassing and a little frightening, dropped even deeper into the water, thinking why every time he takes a bath, imagines them without clothes. Alicia, meanwhile, noted that if you stay in the water for a long time, you can lose vigilance and sink. Finally, the young prince paid attention to the girls. They smiled shyly, and Nate and Tika laughed quietly without hiding their fun. Elise, putting her hands on the cheeks, smiled gently, and noted that the bathroom was small. It seemed that there would be enough space for her and a young prince. The young prince was confused when he suddenly realized they stood in front of him without any clothes. The dark-haired girl was indignantly exclaimed that it was unfair and insisted that it should be. Tika, covering her mouth with her palm, noted that it was extremely cute. Nate smiled, looked at his flesh, and agreed, emphasizing that she was right, and the young prince is really very cute. The young prince, at the same time embarrassed and indignant, retreated into the corner of the bathroom. He loudly asked what the girls were doing in the male bath. However, they only stood silently and did not look out of his eyes. Alex reached forward, trying to use the jump team. He was genuinely surprised when the spells did not work. The young prince turned away and stared in his hand. Stunned, he asked in surprise why magic did not work, assuming that the reason maybe lies in hot water. The girls looked angry at him. Alicia, with a cold threat, noted that this water was imbued with holy magic. The young prince looked at them with fright and asked in surprise if it was really their idea. In the eyes of Alicia, sly sparks broke out, and laughing in his face, she reached out to him. Alicia suggested that the young prince wash his back. Alex was alert, looked at them with a slight fright and embarrassment, imagining what manic zeal she dreamed of rubbing his back. Alex fell and indignantly wondered why they would be sorted to wash with him. The demonic girl covered her mouth with her palm and smiled maliciously, asking if he still understood anything. She proposed to perceive it as a reward. Alex's cheeks flashed a bright blush, and he noted that, although it seems like a child, in fact he was far over 20. The demonic girl smiled widely and crossed her legs, noting that while the opportunity had fallen, he should enjoy this moment. The young prince was dissatisfied with his teeth clenching. Alicia removed the towel, staying completely without clothes, and sat quietly behind the young prince, hugging him by her shoulders. The prince of embarrassment was squeezed and tried to somehow cover his body, extremely confused. The dark-haired girl also dropped the towel and sat down in front of the young prince, starting to soap his legs and stomach. Alex felt awkward and confusedly. He was very uncomfortable with the fact that a girl touched his body without clothes. Tika and Nate sat on the side of the young prince, and smiling began to soap his body. Their cheeks covered a light blush. Alex, barely opening his mouth, tried to hide from them by his hands, slightly pulling his knee to his chest. Selena clenched his fists and scattered, looking at the same time threatening and indignant. Marking loudly, she assured that she simply could not hide her excitement. She exclaimed loudly that she would not calm down until she released the young prince's back. The water in the bath at this time was restless. The dark-haired girl shouted loudly that she was extremely hot and asked Selena to wait. Alicia, without holding back the cry, reported that the water almost boils. Selena looked at the girls alertly, staring surprised at their faces. Tika with Nats jokingly noted that now a real sauna was here. The young prince thought that such friends would not have to be bored. The young prince believed that they were already on the verge of creating a strong state. Outside the window, a deep night, and the sky flashed through the stars. Alex was convinced that first the intentions of the church should be understood and not rushing with careless decisions. He thoughtfully bowed his head, giving his chin with his hand, and thought that it is quite realistic to create an operational point in the capital. Meanwhile, the girls warmed up so much that they began to throw dissatisfied views on each other. Only Selena seemed great. He thought that he may seek him for help. It was a while, the dreamy moment came. Fluffy clouds floated in the sky. At this point, someone called Mr. Virtus, one of the men's screen men on his face, putting his hand to his chest, reported that someone wanted to talk to him, calling himself his brother. Mr. Virtus seriously asked this brother, and firmly replied that he did not know such a person and never remembered it. A servant with a scar on his face reported that this man wanted to talk to him about money. Mr. Virtus looked at the servant with interest. He had blonde hair and somewhat dark skin. For a while he considered heard and first did not say. Mr. Virtus smiled ominously and turned to his servant, asking if he was really a young Prince Alex. In his view, a frank interest was read. Next to Mr. Virtus lay a whole group of various tribes that were firmly near him.